Hi, Pike. How are you?
Oh, this episode. This episode, man. It's not. It's.
Yes.
I. Oh, man. I was doing great, and then I woke up this morning, had a great 8 hours of sleep, stretched a bit. And then I remembered we were doing this episode, and I was like, fuck. Um,
I mean,
yeah.
yeah, we've been talking about this since I've at least like some of our season one coverage. This is not only like the worst episode of DS9. It might unironically be one of the worst episodes in all of Star Trek. Now, I don't just mean this from like a writing standpoint. The writing, I guess, in some ways, is not 100% bad. And like to clarify, there's not glaring plot holes. There's just some like really fucked up morals preached in this episode. Uh, in terms of time and payoff investment, there's almost zero. Like I was watching this episode and I realized I was halfway through it before anything started happening. Uh,
Yeah.
there's some episodes of DS9 where we can't get through it fast enough just because like or we can't get through it in like anything other than a slow pace, in part because like every scene is dense. Here there are entire scenes that I was like, you don't even need any of this. Like none of this matters for what you're trying to tell us, and it doesn't add anything. It doesn't like it doesn't even add anything. It's not that it just doesn't add anything to the episode. It doesn't add anything to like the lore of Star Trek, right? There'd be episodes that are like, oh, here's two characters. Here's like an episode with like Bashir and Garrick interacting. Does this really have anything to do with the episode? It's like no, but it kind of adds to like their characters, or it adds to the lore of the setting, right? You know, you'd have an episode where
Uh,
what was that one episode where the opening is them reviewing some like it's them reviewing some old, and actually let me double check my audio stuff because after my computer crashed I just need to make sure my audio is not fucked up. It's recording me, but I want to make sure the automatic gain is set. It's a little bit high, so I'm going to lower it a little bit. Hopefully the audio is not too bad, but it might have been picking up some pop in there. Point being that it's a it's like I remember that one episode that has they're reviewing like old Cardassian files and like looking at like old uh Bajoran rebellion agents. And
and Kira comes, and they're like,
yeah,
oh,
I don't
like,
think that opening really has too much to do with that episode, but like it's funny
mhm,
because not only does it sort of portray an element of the Cardassians where they had files on all these people but they didn't consider Kira a like threat, there's also like the subtle implication that maybe they lied about these files intentionally to
mhm,
insult some of these Bajoran freedom fighters. Like,
yeah.
it's almost like we lost to you, but we actually didn't consider you guys a threat to begin with. So, yeah, like you won because we were busy with other things. To a degree, right?
Ducat
Where
would definitely do that. Yep.
I mean, it's literally it's a slight, right? Even if it's either a slight or legitimately it's kind of a joke that Kira, who was this actual threat, was not registered as a threat. In part because like when you're this like underground rebellion, you don't want to be known. So if
Mhm.
by the end of it, it's like I wasn't registered as a threat, it's like they didn't know you existed. Like that was the point.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of ways you can read
y-
that scene. It's funny. It doesn't have anything to do with the episode, but it adds character. It's a little bit of world building. It's nice. Here, half the episode is just none of that. I was thinking like you could have started this episode like I think like 20 minutes in, and you would get the same thing. Um,
Yeah.
it's it's
Yeah.
it's a bad episode. Um, and we're just gonna have to like start it up. So we can kind of summarize some of the stuff fast. This might either be a long recording or a short recording. Short because again, there's a lot of stuff where we just don't have anything to say. Long because we might actually start getting into like why is it that this really kind of fucks not just with like morality, but also really kind of hurts Kira's character. Um, we have established that Kira is probably one of the strongest characters so far, right? In terms of like writing, in
Yeah.
terms of like how well developed she is. Like I would say the closest we have in Rival is Odo. Um,
Yeah.
we're only just starting to explore Cisco like really in depth. Bashir hasn't really gotten so much. We've gotten some stuff with Dax, but some of that hasn't been very good, and it's only kind of hurt our understanding of how she functions. And then
Mhm.
we have like Quark is probably like up there in terms of us understanding how he works and how he thinks. But I think really like Kira and Odo are the characters who have been put through the ringer in terms of like us trying to understand who they are and them trying to understand themselves who they are. So to have Kira in so many ways be like kind of like chastised for making the right decisions here and her not standing up for herself really kind of hurts her character. Um,
Yeah.
Also, on top of that, right?
Yeah.
Like, uh, just going a little bit further to explain like the nature of like writing. When you're writing something, like I'm generally someone who doesn't really like to write to theme. Like when I do writing, I don't like, oh, I want to express this one thematic idea and everything else needs to basically narrow in on that. I don't like writing to theme, right? But if you do like writing to theme,
Mhm.
that's fine. What I would say though is you have to sort of be careful because the more stuff you sort of throw in, the more clouded your theme can become, the more uh, pointless it is. There's elements of this episode that have nothing to do with the theme. Like, there's a very central message that this episode is trying to present in a way,
Mhm.
and there's like random plot elements. There's like random like contrivances in terms of like challenges they have to overcome during the episode that are like once that challenge is overcome, it's forgotten and has nothing to do with the rest of the episode and doesn't even like tie in thematically. It's like, what were you trying to like? Why would you do it this way? Um, so we can kind of start. Uh, so the episode opens up with like this the cold open of Kira is she seems a little bit like rushed and haggard. I think in my notes I say the scene it starts a bit awkwardly in part because Kira seems really busy with something. Cisco invites her into his office and says like, "Hey, do you have this specific report I've been trying to get from you on the like he's trying to get he's trying to get
Dude,
this next
the
month's duty roster, yeah."
yeah.
And she says that she's been busy. She's been dealing with Minister Razan about irrigating the Trailer Peninsula, and because she's so busy with this, she's kind of shirked her other duties, right? Uh,
First duties, I will say, is like, hey, Kira, you are the first officer of this station. So, I don't
so
think you.
what I would say is that's a little complicated. However, I do say this is something that's actually somewhat interesting for Kira because like the idea is she is working with these high level members of the Bajoran government and
Mhm.
like influential figures within Bajor to try and help build Bajor build back, right? It's like, okay, like we've kind of been a little bit left in a nebulous hole in terms of like what's the state of Bajor right now. And this episode sort of states
Mhm.
that Bajor is not in a great place. Maybe it's not like falling apart, but it's still like low in terms of like what it used to be, right?
Yeah, it is still like, listen, we cannot
Oh
take.
yeah.
We can maybe take one detachment.
It would take generations to overcome what they went through.
Yeah.
But the point is she seems to be trying to help these other people with tasks. She has a high position in their government. She's close to Starfleet. She has access to all these resources. She's able to make these decisions and help people, and she's trying to do that, but that's also not her job, right? Like,
Right.
it's not her job to be doing this. Like, she shouldn't be worrying about getting this peninsula irrigated. That's not her job, right? She's not some sort of, like,
Yeah. If she
minister of
wants to
agriculture.
activize, she needs to do it off duty when it's not like,
Well,
hey,
I'm not trying to
we,
criticize her here, right? She seems to be trying to help everybody. She's trying to do too much. That's the criticism, right?
mhm,
And I don't think she's
mhm,
like wrong for this. And even she kind of realizes she fucked up. Again, I don't think this scene hurts her. I think it really sort of strengthens her character. She is trying to help her people. She's trying to do her duties to the station. At the same time,
mhm,
like she doesn't have enough hours in the day, right? And
mhm,
she is very much like I can respect her trying to do this, all this. Then we get another scene. And, Cisco does sort of chastise her in a way, but he says he can understand. Uh, but then we get another scene where she goes to Quark's bar. And in it, there is this man who's playing music, and he's playing a very beautiful tune that's sort of a rendition of DS9's theme. And it's very like somber music for the bar. And Quark is pissed. Like Quark basically called her down to the bar, saying like, "Hey, uh, he's playing like this guy who's playing the music. He's apparently one of the best like musicians in Bajor. He was playing all these concert halls and he was making everything like it was so great. And Kira got him this job, playing in Quark's bar because he hasn't been able, like, they haven't like rebuilt a lot of their old concert halls yet. They have like
Yeah.
the government is so busy trying to function, they haven't done really anything in terms of strengthening their cultural presence,
Yeah.
which makes sense, right? Like, it's like, okay, we're trying to just get
Yeah.
like water and farming working. We're not going to worry about you playing your music for everybody. And this guy, like, he does have an interesting statement to talk about, but we'll get to that when we do. But let's see. She was basically saying, like, look, everyone's mesmerized that this guy's playing so well. And Quark is like, yeah, and when they're mesmerized, they're not drinking and they're not gambling. Like, um,
Yeah.
and one thing I do like is Quark does sort of criticize. He's like, hold on, I want to get like the actual lines. Let's see. So while they're memorized, they're not gambling, they're not eating, they're barely drinking. Profits are down across the board. And she's like, he just started yesterday. And Quark's like, I monitor my gross income hourly. My hourly figures become my indicators. My indicators become my projections. And my projections, based on the last 26 hours, show unprecedented decline in profits.
Yeah.
It's so autistically like measured. It's great. It's like this is like every single like Ferengi is like I measure the amount of money I make per second. Like it's
Listen, the
so
model
great.
needs data, and he's getting data.
Yeah.
It's just natural.
But it's like Kira talks to the man saying like, hey, like you're doing great, you're playing well, but can you play something a little bit with like a little bit more pop, a little bit more pizzazz? And he's like, yeah, I get it. Less concert hall, more dance hall. And
Yeah.
one thing he says that's very interesting. I want to see if I can get it. Is he states like he's talking to Kira. He's like thanking her for getting her this position. And one of the things he says like the Bajorans will never regain their self-respect unless they reclaim their artistic heritage, which I think is a really good line.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
sort of shows that like in his belief, right? It's like Bajor might be neglecting its cultural like reestablishment in favor of these other things, right? It's like yes, getting food and housing to everybody and power to hospitals is very important, 100%. At the
Yeah.
same time, what are the like? It's the line from Dead Poet Society. Math, science, medicine. These are the things that help us live. But music, poetry, art. These are the things we live for.
Hmm.
And it's a matter of like I get his opinion, and I'm not saying he's wrong. Clearly, though, right? He's not saying, oh, you shouldn't be like making like irrigating these peninsulas. You should be getting a
Yeah.
concert hall. He's simply saying like it's important that we make like footholds in this direction as well going forward, and that's what she's kind of trying to do, right? She's trying to get him a venue, and it's not the best venue
Hmm.
in the world, but it's a venue. Regardless,
Yeah.
like uh this scene also really sort of shows that Kira hates Quark now. We mentioned it in season 1. Basically, the moment no, actually, it's in this season. The moment Quark is partially responsible for getting those people onto DS9 who were going to kill Dax,
Yeah.
Kira's attitude towards him changes from he's an annoying like prick to she actually hates this guy and threatens to kill him regularly. Uh,
Yeah.
like let's see, what's the last thing she says to him? I want to see. Like let's see. Um, what's I don't know. It's hard to express, but she's very like vitriolic, very critical of him, and she's the one making demands of him, right? Like she demands that he has this guy play in the hall. When he complains, she's like, I don't care. Like she's basically like treating this guy like garbage, which fair. Quark's not a great guy. At the same
It's
time,
like you promised me
yeah,
you would try him out for a month. And it's like if my projections hold true, in a month I'll be out of business. And Kira said, uh, just says like you're going to do this, and it's like why? Because I asked you to. And it's just like yeah, pretty much all he can get from her is a little bit more bounce, and that leads
yeah.
to the conversation.
But it's
Basically, it's
hard. It's
like
hard to it's hard
listen,
to express by talking about it. The way she says this is not like kind because I asked you to is like oh you could say that friendly, but the way she says it is like because I asked you to. Like the idea is like
mm,
we're not arguing here.
mhm.
But yeah, so she doesn't like Quark, and I need to kind of express while we've had a lot to say about these two scenes, they don't really have anything to do with the episode. Um, all right, so those two scenes are done. Like that's already like a sign
Yeah.
of kind of bad writing here. Is this is not great.
It will only tie into one other scene technically, like, because Verani shows up
Yes,
again. But
kind of.
other
Well,
than that, it's like
yeah, he does, but it gets information to a character that could have been gotten from a different means, so it doesn't really help. We'll
mhm.
get to that. So Kira goes back to ops, and the wormhole is opening. The ship is coming through. Their ship is about to explode, so they warp the people onto the DS9. Which then we get these ugly as sin aliens. Let me try and get them because like it's really unfortunate. Their dress is like splattered tie dye. Um, their hair is like designed really stupid. And they have like these like flaky pox on their face. I'm gonna try and get like an image of it, but it is like this is not like there's ugly aliens that like look good in terms of like their design where it's like yeah like that's supposed to look kind of like weird. This was lazy as hell. It doesn't
Yeah.
like even work. It's I don't know what you were trying to do with these aliens other than to make them ugly and like whatever. But this is where we get something that's a little bit of an interesting little lore tidbit, although I do think it breaks a few things going forward. The universal translators that are used in Star Trek are adaptable. So
Mhm.
the more someone speaks, the more it can basically pick up their language patterns, and the more it can basically start to translate them. So it's just like, all right, just keep talking. Eventually, our translators are going to understand you. Now, first off, this I guess part of the issue is there's a few issues here. Like we could go on for this for a while, but the biggest issue we would have with this is do they have a compatible universal translator that works the same way?
Mhm.
If yes, then like they should not be like somewhat hostile they are right now because right now they can't speak with the crew, right? The crew's trying to talk to them saying like, "Hey, we saved you. You guys have like some severe plasma burns. We want to get you medical attention." And they're being hostile, right? Because like they don't understand what these people are saying, right? Which makes sense, right? You're transported onto a station. You can't understand what anyone's saying. As such, you're defensive. Makes sense, right?
Mhm.
If they have a universal translator that is similar to or compatible with the universal translator the Starfleet uses, then they should know, okay, we just have to keep saying certain words until it can understand us. There would actually probably be like a procedure you would say whenever you encounter a new alien species. These are the words you say to like develop the vernacular of the universal translator. Like you would say like a bunch of
Mhm.
different random words that it could pick up like its meaning and understanding from, stuff like that, right? Like you'd use like
Yeah.
basic grammar like techniques and work up from there.
This
Now,
is Apple. Like
yeah,
this is
but if
an
they
Apple.
don't have a compatible universal translator, which, given the fact that they're very hostile at first, they seem to not understand that the translator needs time to translate. Uh, then how are they able to understand the crew once it starts translating them?
I I don't know.
Exactly.
I don't.
This plot has nothing to do with the rest of the episode, and it goes on for like the next 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Like the next 10 minutes of this
Uh.
episode is these people not being able to communicate with the crew. Very minimal information being presented to us, and them kind of just like wandering around and saying random gibberish until it starts to translate them, and then we can get to the plot again. This is like 10 minutes of the episode, and it's legitimately like frustrating to watch. It's like a little
Oh.
it's like a
Oh. The, the don't forget the fucking thing where they go by the shops, and
oh we'll get
there's
to
a
that.
little
We'll get
bit
to that.
there, but
Yeah, yeah.
okay, go ahead. Go
No,
ahead.
no, no, no.
Sorry,
Say,
sorry.
say
I
what you
thought
want to
you
say.
were gonna
We'll
say.
get to that. I just want you to like elaborate on your point. Like,
I hate the males of this species because they are just like, hey, we picked up this item and started looking at it at the shop, and it's like Odo takes it away from them. So, kind of universal, it's like, when someone looks at you gruffly and takes the thing you randomly picked up away, it's like, oh, don't touch that. And they just keep fucking picking it up. It's like, no,
oh, we'll,
like,
we'll,
stop.
we'll yeah, we'll get to it. We'll get to that. Holy shit, that is like a I want to know what the writers were trying to say about that because if they had a
Mhm.
point to say, uh, they tilted their hand in a very bad way. Like we're talking like this would not fly today in terms of like this didn't fly when this came out, I'm sure, but this would not fly today in terms of like how they've depicted stuff is like. Are you saying this like sexism is justified? It's like, well, we're not saying it's wrong. We'll get to that. Uh,
Yeah.
so the they don't understand anything that's going on. The crew doesn't understand them at all, and like they only seem to be listening to Kira. We'll get into that why, but again, like we just have a huge part of this episode where they're not sure what's going on. They're trying to get these people to the medical ward. So, uh, Pike, these people are sitting in the
Hmm.
transporter. They just transported them. Why wouldn't you transport them to the medical ward?
I don't. I
Exactly. They don't do that. Instead, what they do is they walk them through the promenade, the crowded promenade. For these people who don't understand anything, who might be traumatized from the ship blowing up, like, and they walk them through the promenade. Again, this is just very stupid. They only seem to be listening to Kira. They get them through the promenade. They still don't understand a word they're saying. And let's see. Uh, like you were saying, so the breakup is there is a woman there. She looks like I don't know, like maybe like I don't know how old she is. She has a lot of makeup on. But she almost looks like she's in her 40s in a way.
Mhm.
Uh, a young man who she seems to have like her arm around. He's injured. Like this is her son, and you know you can kind of interpret that by how she's trying to care for him, right? There's two other men that also look moderately young. We don't know who they are, but those two men just keep wandering off in random directions, and Odo is trying to get them to like follow.
Just wrangle them on the path.
Yeah,
Just get
and then
them to.
I had a particular note of like really bad dialogue because what they do is when they arrive on the promenade and Odo arrives, Odo talks to Cisco and asks what the situation is, and they just restate everything we just learned.
Yeah.
So it's like it's in writing that makes sense, right? This is Odo. It does not have knowledge of what happened in Ops, right? But you had the opening here, and they were going down the turbo lift. You could have implied that like they explain the situation to Odo on the way, so that we don't have to repeat everything we just learned. Because literally, the dialogue is the universal translators aren't working for them, and we're trying to get them to the medical wing, and it's like I mean, we know that as viewers. Why are you taking time to show this to us while nothing else is happening? It's poor writing, right? It's like you have a limited amount of time
Yeah.
to tell a story, and you're reiterating the thing we got in the previous scene. It's not great.
Literally could just have Odo be like, I got your message. And it's like, yep, there we go.
I mean, like he doesn't
Like,
even
there we go.
necessarily need to like. Oh, this reminds me of another issue I had. So let me get to my notes because this is actually very important. They make a point that the universal. So this could be a common thing that happens, right? Where someone like, okay, new species is coming to the station. It's going to take time for their translators to adapt, right? Maybe that's a
Mhm.
common thing that happens. Therefore, Odo wouldn't need to ask if that happens, right? But they've also expressed that for some reason, the universal translators cannot instantly translate these people. This happened when they were in the previous scene, right? Where they were asking O'Brien, why can we not understand them? The universal translators working? And O'Brien said, they're like grammar and syntax structure are like nothing we've ever seen before. I'm like, okay, let's be fair. Star Trek has a lot of hand wavy magic technology, right? Replicators, transporters, all this sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Their translators are basically magic, depending on like how they work. There's not really a logical way it kind of functions, right? But as long as they're kind
Yeah.
of consistent with it, it's whatever, right? You need all the creatures to be able to speak English because of the nature of a TV show. You know, you don't want to have like subtitles for the aliens and like imply that everyone just speaks like multiple alien languages, right? Like you could have
Hmm.
like a series that does that, where it's like all the aliens speak like their native tongue, but everyone learns everyone else's language, so that you just have that. But that wouldn't like be the best for like a television like airing because it's actually like what happened in Halo. So are you aware that like between Halo 1 and 2, randomly the Covenant starts speaking in English?
Yeah, I noticed that back
Yeah.
when we played it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. In the first game, this kind of makes sense, right? Like the Halo is fairly interesting in the sense of like both sides barely know anything about each other, but they're at war.
Hmm.
The thing is they can't communicate and they're constantly trying to kill each other. So there's an element of like, the only thing they learn is like what they can scrap together from the other side. But they don't know each other's language. And I think the grunts, I don't know if the grunts in the first game can use English, but it is the lore that grunts are very good at learning languages very quickly.
Ooh, I did not know
However,
that.
yeah, they pick up languages like within hours, which is like okay, that's just crazy sci-fi stuff. That's fine again, right? But then in Halo 2, when we have scenes from Arbiter's perspective, they're still speaking in English. And it's like, wait a minute, why would you be
Mm.
speaking in English? Like, let's just say hypothetically, the Covenant learned English so they can communicate with humans for some reason, right?
Hmm.
That wouldn't make sense why they still use English when humans aren't around. But they do
Yeah.
that because, for gameplay purposes, they wanted to tell a story from the Covenant's perspective in Halo 2. So they made it in English, right? Or they made it, so it could translate into any language. Or, they translate it for whatever language we're listening to. But they made it so that us as players could understand what the Covenant are saying. Because they understood that to tell a story from here, people kind of need to hear this a little bit better. They need to understand what's being said. So, there's obviously going to be always limitations in whatever you're writing in terms of that, and you have to make that maybe some consolations of like, okay, we're gonna have like less of a language element of the story, and just have everyone speak in the universal language of English. Point being is, if
Yeah.
you're gonna have this translator magic, like, I do not believe for a second that this particular species, for some reason, has a language that no other species. It's so much different from every other language that it can't translate it instantly.
Hmm.
Remember when in season 1 when Tosk arrived and he immediately spoke
Yeah.
English? Yeah, like his
I am
language is
talking.
apparently his language was apparently not like developed or changed or different enough to not take time to translate, but they immediately understood what he was saying. Same thing with the aliens that were hunting him. In fact, every alien we've gotten from the Gamma Quadrant from this point and going forward immediately is translated, except for this.
Yeah.
So it's like, why is this alien's language different? It just is. Don't worry about it. To me, it's
Okay.
like, this is not in like, I'd be okay if that was I mean, that's what the episode Darmok is about. Darmok from
Yeah.
TNG, right? Is the difference is though, it actually does translate to English. The thing is, the way they communicate is literally because we haven't talked about DS9 or TNG a lot. People might not know this. The alien species in Darmok, they kind of communicate through verbal memes. I'm not joking.
Yeah.
Like, they
Yep.
will say, like, Tanagra on the ocean. And you're like, what does that mean? It's like, well, to them, that's an idea in their head of, like, leaving to a new place. So when you say, oh, like, if you were to say, like, I'm going to go leave, like, I'm leaving this building, right? If we said that, to
Hmm.
them, they would be like, Tanagra on the ocean. And they would understand that as, oh, you're leaving. So
Yeah.
we could translate what they said, but their way of communicating was different. And actually, like in lower decks, they had made progress on like translators for them so that they could still
Hmm.
communicate with us more regularly. So that I can kind of believe that there is a few alien species out there that their way of communicating is so vastly different. But considering that this alien species can still like the translator can adapt to them, so I just don't understand what is so different about this language, and the episode doesn't care, right? The episode Darmok
Yeah.
is about Picard trying to learn this person's language so that they can communicate because they're both stuck on this planet. Like, that's
Hmm.
the episode. That's what it's about. That's what it's trying to do. This episode, again, once we hit the 20-minute mark, that plot line's gone. It doesn't have anything else to do with the episode, and that is such a, like, again, a waste of time. Like, what were you trying to do? Like, Darmok is an interesting episode in some senses because you're watching Picard solve a problem, right? He is basically presented with the riddle of communication, and the satisfaction is watching him solve it, right? That's interesting to a degree. Here, it's just like, no, we're just going to watch these people babble around until, uh, until they can start communicating normally. It's just shit.
Yeah.
But
It's
while it's going down, we can get to the point you were making with like the two men that are like following these women, they just refuse to fucking listen to anything.
like they don't even understand the fucking like sort of like preventative gesture. Like, no, put it, like, like Otto takes it from him, puts it back down. They take it again. Again, he repeats the motion of like, put it,
Oh yeah,
like,
it's
take it,
it's
put,
it's like
and it's just like,
the way you would show this is they take one thing, he takes it from their hand and sits it back down, so they go grab something different.
hmm.
Because like in that idea, it's like, oh, they're curious or they're trying to like look at stuff and they're interested in it, but they're not going to go for the same thing they were just told not to touch. Essentially, they're going to
Hmm.
go for something different. But instead, they do, and that's exactly what was happening before, where one of them was trying to like wander over to like look at this sign, and Odo pulled him over back to the group, and then he just turns around and walks and looks back at the sign. It's like, so yeah, it's just wrangling these babies that are walking around. Um,
Yeah, it's like I just, how did the species survive?
Well, so I
Like
mean, again,
intact.
yeah, they're almost presenting the idea that because they can't communicate, their ability to think is also zero. Like, it's like
Uh,
they're like giant toddlers. When in reality, it's like, look, um, the reason they're going to the medical like room or the medical like hall, I forget what they call it, it's just like medical ward, whatever. But the
yeah,
reason they're going there is because the sun has plasma burns, which are very serious in Star Trek generally. Um,
yeah,
so the sun is like very injured. He has this like huge burn on his arm, and they're just like walking around. Like one of them like looks at a dress and like keeps pointing at it. The woman, the
yeah. The
mother,
mom.
and it's like, okay, so like I get that you can't communicate and you're very confused, and that's probably very disorienting. I understand that. But your son's injured, and you seem to trust these people enough to follow them. Why are you just wandering away from them? Like, wouldn't you want like if you trust them, then wouldn't you be like, okay, they're trying to get us some attention and medical help, or something like they're trying to bring us where we need to be, as opposed to let me go look in this clothing shop. Also, we miss an opportunity. It's a clothing shop. This could be Garrick's shop. Where is Garrick?
Yeah. Where's Garrick?
This is just that meme because I sent Pike a meme earlier. Let me see if I can find it in our DMs. But it's just like it's like I'm watching someone was making like a post like I'm watching DS9 and I finally get it. Like this guy Garrick, I'm so interested to see him all the
Found
time.
it.
But yeah,
I'm
it's like
watching DS9. I'm so sorry, people who are obsessed with secondary supporting characters. I get it now. I understand your pain. I am one of you. Every episode, I'm like, man, I hope I see my guy Garrick this time. I miss my guy Garrick, and in almost every time, there is no fucking Garrick. Just watch the episode Shadow Play, and when Bashir mentioned Garrick, I leaped into the air and clapped my hands and cheered. Crazy behavior. Good show though. I'm enjoying it.
I mean
Just
like here's the thing.
yeah,
Garrick has been in like 2 episodes. Like
yeah.
he is already like such a beloved character for some people when they watch DS9 because it's just he is so great. It's literally the Simpson meme of like whenever Garrick's not on screen, people should be asking, "Where's Garrick?"
Where's
It's
Garrick?
it's. But point is, all this scene is useless. Nothing is accomplished here. Um,
Mm.
like they move forward. Again, the woman's like looking at dress, and I mean, I have that scene where like Odo's like constantly having to like take these men and like put the stuff back down. It's like it's watching Odo deal with toddlers, but it's not even like cute kids. Like if you had like a bunch of kids running around and Odo having to deal with kids, that'd be kind of like almost funny, right? Like the stoic
Yeah.
stern man having to deal with kids. It's like in TNG when they have like Picard have to interact with kids because he's not good at interacting
Mhm.
with kids. Right? It's almost funny of like, haha, look at Picard, he's so smart, he's so wise, but at the same time, like, he can't handle kids, and these kids are just like, I'm hungry, and he's like, go get food then. I don't know. Like, but it's not even the enjoyment of that
Yeah.
because it's just these weird babbling adults that are like nonsense, and also they're ugly.
Also, they're ugly. I hate them.
I hate this so much. There's no redeeming quality. If they were at least an interesting looking alien, maybe I'd care about them more. But they're not.
No, you don't
They
get
look
that.
like they have like
No.
they look like they have like systemic acne or cystic acne like all over their face. It's gross.
Yeah.
So we skip
Yeah.
ahead. Skipping ahead further. One part that's kind of weird is like they have like the doctor or they have Bashir like he's trying to like give them medical attention and the woman takes the medical tool away and gives it to Kira. And Kira's like, I can't do this. They give it back to Bashir, and Bashir like says like soothingly, I can do this. And the woman allows him, and I'm like, I get what you're trying to say because I know how this is gonna come up in a few scenes, but this felt very useless again. And
Yeah.
remember how I said like this is not like there was a part where I was like, we could just kind of skip to here. I think the scene you can skip to is when they arrive on the promenade. Simply say that a damaged ship has docked at DS9. The aliens can't communicate with us. Like, you can have this in the opening, right? We encountered a new alien species from the wormhole. Unfortunately, their translators don't work, and they need medical attention. And this is how the episode would start, and you'd be walking these aliens to, like, the medical ward, right? But,
Mm-hmm.
no, instead we just have, like, all this jumbling around. They bring the aliens to a bedroom, and they're like, this is where you can stay until like, we can communicate with you. Cisco makes some food for them. And he has like Kira eat it first so they know it's safe. Again, they're really hammering the home that for some reason they only trust Kira. And then finally, like they're just blithering words again and again and again until some of the words start getting translated. Oh, it's like instead of saying
Oh.
let me grab some of the gibberish, it's just like huh, Nulux, Skria, Soko, Ru, Need. And then, like, for some reason, Odo's like, wait, she just said need. As in, like, I need your help, right? And I'm
Mhm.
like, wait a minute, why'd you pick up on that, Odo? Like, need could be spelled, like, need could be completely random gibberish. Like, need. It's like, uh, need what? It's like, need. And you're just, like, making a random gesture.
So,
It's like,
given he regularly observes solids and such, and they're kind of focused on this conversation that's happening. He might just be like, oh, like based on the emphasis she's putting on it and such, need probably means what I think
uh,
it means.
I
Like
think, I mean,
I.
maybe. So, first off, who knows what it translates for Odo? He doesn't necessarily speak English. Um,
Mhm.
But what she says is she says Batak Rama Sada, Zula Ku, Hemena Ki, Sulak Need Estasa. And he's
What
like,
does this
wait,
mean?
no. And he says, wait, she said need. It's like, um, I mean, she also said like Sada, like I don't know, like maybe she's saying like, so like who knows what that says? Like it's almost like he was told that word, by the way, is in English. Don't worry. It's like okay.
Hmm.
I think they should have chosen a different word for it, right? Like, say like
Yeah.
ship. Like, oh, that's a little bit more unique in a way, like in terms of like verbal like thing. I don't know. It's whatever. Um,
Hmm.
so she keeps talking, and this is one kind of good thing that like starts happening is some of the words start translating more and more, and they get to the point where she says, like our ship found the eye of the universe, the wormhole, and we went through it. All of our people are
Hmm.
like spread out, and they ask how many of your people are there, and she says 3 Jataka, and they're like, okay, we don't know what Jataka means, and Kira's like 300, and the woman shakes her head, and then she's like 3,000. The woman shakes her head again, which doesn't make sense because she can't translate the word, so why would she know what Kira's saying? Whatever.
Yeah.
And then you have Odo like cautiously ask 3 million, and the woman's like, "Yes, 3 million." And that's obviously like the pull of the episode, right? Is like, wait a minute,
Hmm.
3 million people are about to come through the wormhole, and they need a place to stay. Like, holy shit! Like
Yeah.
that's an interesting plot line, right? Is how does DS9 accommodate 3 million people about to show up? Um, they don't really deal with
They
it.
don't.
Um,
Yeah.
But point is, uh, I felt that's when like the sort of scene ends and it fades to black because it's like yeah, that's a huge moment of tension. And you're like, oh shit. Um, okay, like we can start getting into like some of the major. Well, actually, no, not yet. So we have this scene. Oh god. There's a reason I hate this scene. It's because we get the second name drop of the Dominion. I love the Dominion in terms of like
Yeah.
DS9's plot line. The fact that the second time it's mentioned is with these dumb bitches. I hate it. I hate it
Hmm.
so much. Um, she explains her people's history. Uh, they were slaves for a long period of time to this one alien species. Let's see. Um, I'm trying to find like what's the name. It doesn't matter. And another more stronger society like came into the picture and basically destroyed them, and that allowed our people to escape and free ourselves. It's like okay, I
Hmm.
guess that kind of makes some sense.
Okay.
Um, then she said, like, oh, like they asked her if she was one of their leaders, and she says, no, I was a farmer. I just happened to find the eye of the universe first. And I think that's fine, right? Like, she's not one of the leaders. I'd question, like, what was the role of their leaders if they were basically a slave people? Because they said that we were slaves to this other group. I guess you could have a hierarchy within the slaves where some of them are the civilian leaders of the slave population, but it's still a bit
Hmm.
like would the people who are ruling over you allow you to have like a leadership role? Because that almost feels like that's something they would want to discourage. But regardless, um,
I mean, how long have they been free, anyways?
yeah, we don't. Yeah, I guess that's
You know what I
true.
mean?
Also, but given what we're about to learn, it seems as if that leader role is a little bit more formal because this woman says like, "Oh, I'm not a leader. I'm just a farmer." It's like, "Oh, so like you haven't had time to develop a leader role." Uh, maybe like I don't know the way it felt presented to me is that it's a little bit more of a formal title of who's a leader. But maybe you're right. Maybe it is just like, oh yeah, like while they were running away and trying to find a new place to live, leaders developed, right? Um, and then they learned that like the people who basically defeated their former slave masters was the Dominion. Um, so again,
Mhm.
another name drop of the Dominion. Uh, and their goals, like we were hoping to go through the eye of the universe. Our people have an ancient story from our sacred text that just beyond the eye of the universe, a planet of sorrow, where the Skrean people, which is what these people are, will sow seeds of joy. That is our home. It's like, oh, okay. Like I guess you'll figure that out, and we'll help you get to a new planet. Um, they also make the point that all the ships, like they're not everybody's going to be able to come on DS9, right? Like all of your 3 million people, most of them are going to be confined to their ships, which makes sense. DS9,
Mhm.
DS9 can only hold what was the number they gave? I think it has a population of
Ah.
7,000 people. So Odo mentions that the station only holds 7,000 people. Now it might be able to hold more, right? But generally 7,000 is its ideal population. We can kind of assume,
Mhm.
right? Um, so yeah, and they've also said they lived under their slave masters for 8 centuries. They were forced to work as laborers and servants. Uh, yeah, and then that's where they mentioned they were conquered by the Dominion. We also learned something else in this scene. Um, the scene starts with Hanik looking at the Hanik is the really the one with the weird hair and the she's the main Skrean we interact with. She is giving all the men like a weird look. And she's like, I'm just not used to men, being here. And they're like, oh, she's like, men don't involve themselves in situations like this. And they're like, oh, are all your leaders women? And she's like, yes. Uh, let's see. Men are much too emotional to be leaders. They're always fighting amongst themselves. It's their favorite thing to do. And then she immediately turns to them and says, I'm sorry. I hope I haven't offended you. And it comes across as very fake. Um, I don't know if it's the
Mhm.
acting, but here's the thing. If I was like talking to you, like you might say, "Hey, I don't mean any offense by this, but," and then you move into something that you're worried might offend someone, right? Like, you know, if you were interacting with someone and like, "Hey, man, I don't mean offense by this, but you're acting kind of aggressive and mean right now," right? Like, I understand that I might be offending you by calling you out, which is why I have to preface what I'm about to say. Or you might say, "Oh, like I think you're aggressive and mean, Pike," and then you're like, well, hold on, that's not fair. And then I'm like, oh, well, I don't mean to offend, right? Like the way she says it is as if she knew it was going to be offensive, but then immediately just cuts herself off and says, I don't mean to insult you. It's like, then why the fuck did you just do that? Like, if what
Because
you
I
thought
really
you were
wanted
about,
to insult you.
well, yeah, that's what it comes across as. Is like it's not like she was called out for being offensive and she apologized for it, which would be understandable, right? Like maybe in her people, like, oh, that's not offensive to me, but I recognize it's offensive to you, so I'm sorry, right? That would be one situation. Another is I recognize what I'm about to say is offensive, but I need to say it anyway. What she does is she immediately insults like men, and then immediately says, "Oh, but like I don't mean to offend you." It's like then why'd you say it? You could have been more.
Mhm.
You could have chosen your words differently. Again, these people are stupid. Like we're actually going to learn their average IQ must be like room temperature.
Yeah.
They're actually stupid, and this is like one of the brighter ones. Let's be fair. Um, but yeah, she talks about how men are stupid, and then when you see all the men that are interacting with her, they all act like brutes and Neanderthals, right? Like they really hammer home how stupid some of the men are. Um, let's see. So yeah, that's that whole scene. And again, you might be thinking like, oh, so does the sexism element come into the story at all? No, it doesn't. It's actually almost completely forgotten. It has literally no relevance in the story. Uh,
Well,
they
yeah.
just
Well, so it's really weird. There's no discussion of it, but folks, they are going to prove that there's a reason why the men are not in charge. Holy fuck!
yeah.
Like,
I mean, like I said,
he.
they show these men as being like very stupid and brutish. I'm not saying they're not, right? But it's just an element
Mhm.
of like there's been episodes of Star Trek plenty of times where it's like, oh, this is a female dominated society, and our men are seen as like arm candy, right? Like there was an episode of TNG
Mhm.
where they encounter like this matriarchal society, and the men are basically like all trophy husbands, right? Because
Mhm.
they're like maybe they're less intelligent, or just like their society is basically like, yeah, we don't like train men for anything other than to be handsome and to admire them physically. And then like one of these women like falls kind of in love with Riker, so she wants him to be like her trophy husband or something like that. But he's obviously like
Mhm.
too much. Like I think part of the reason she likes him is because he's actually like like intellectually challenging, right? He's actually able to sort
Hmm.
of like talk back to her, and she's like, "Ooh, like a worthy opponent," sort of deal. And again,
Hmm.
that's like the premise of that episode, right? Is they're intentionally flipping like a dynamic to like sort of poke fun at it or have commentary on it or discuss it. It's literally just a background detail here, but they draw attention to it and just don't do anything with it. It'd be like, if you're watching a show and be like, look at that thing in the background. Okay, we're not going to talk about it anymore. And then like a few scenes later, they're like, hey, that thing in the background, it's still there. We're not going to do anything about it though. Literally nothing to do with the plot.
Yep.
This obviously explains why they were like trusting Kira at the start of the story. But again, you don't need to do this. It doesn't add anything to the story. It's just like, oh, this entire society is sexist towards men. Okay. It's also later proven that their sexism is apparently accurate because their men are actually stupid, like stupider than the like than all of them are, because all the screens seem to be really dumb. But like I guess the men are also just like violent and very dumb. So whatever. But it's like I don't know why you did this. It's like again, you had the translation plot subplot that's forgotten now, and now you're having the sexism subplot that's not going to go anywhere. When are we going to get to the actual plot of this episode? Well, not anytime soon. So
Yeah.
the next scene we have is Kira is like shows up the next morning. They're tired, and she's there to tell them that like, oh yeah, more of your ships have arrived through the wormhole. Uh, and then this is like the scene where Kira and Hanik are bonding. Um,
Hmm.
this is where it's revealed the other two men that were part of that like 4-person group. One like of the 3 men that arrived, one of them was her son. The other 2 are her husbands.
Yeah.
She doesn't know what that term means though, and she's just like, oh, those are my males. And she's like, wait, you have 2 of them? And she's like, well, of course. Like that's what they're for. It's for bedding them. And it's like,
Uh.
it's like, oh, this. I need to point out, the Ferengi are regularly criticized for how they treat women in their setting.
Yeah.
Like, so the Ferengi, I praise the Ferengi in terms of like, I really like a lot of the Ferengi. I don't like praise them for that though. I'm like, yeah, they're a shitty species. They enslave their women. They're hyper like crazy capitalists. I don't think they're like good people, right? But I enjoy watching them because I think they're really well fleshed out and well developed, and there's a lot of really good acting that is carried by some of the Ferengi characters, right?
Hmm.
Like, there's a lot of quality to watching them in DS9. But they are constantly criticized by other characters like Dax, like Kira, like Cisco. Like, Cisco doesn't like Jake hanging out with Nog because he worries that Nog's view of women is going to rub off on Jake. Right?
Yeah.
That is a plot line that is brought up. The fact that these women don't allow men in positions of power, women are allowed to take multiple husbands, all the men are very stupid and they're clearly being taken advantage of by these women. That's never brought up. Like,
Yeah.
ever. And I'm like, wait a minute. You have the Ferengi right there. Like, Ferengi treat their women the exact same way. In fact, it's actually, Ferengi treat their women better than these women treat their men. Because Ferengi don't have,
Uh.
hold on. Ferengi don't participate in polyamory. In their view, a marriage is a business agreement. Like, to them, it's like, this is my wife. The agreement is she will give me children. Right? But this is mine, I'm hers, like we're together. I will provide for her and make sure that she is never without. That's like the point, right? Like, don't get me wrong, they treat their women shitty in a lot of ways, but this woman, she like these men like wake up to see what's going on and she says, "Get back to bed. Go now. Leave." Like she's having a conversation right now, right? So she wants them to go away. And I'm like, are they not going to be interested that someone just came in the middle of the night to talk to you? Like maybe they're interested in like, your whole population's coming through the wormhole. Maybe they're interested in that. Do they want to have a part in the conversation? And she just dismisses them and tells them to go back to bed. And it's like, oh, I
Yeah.
mean, okay, like, all right, whatever. Like, don't get me wrong. We don't know too much about these people's society. I'm pretty sure the Ferengi still treat their women worse overall. But like, there's some elements where the Ferengi clearly have like more respect for their women than these women have for their men. And again, the Skria are not called out on it at all.
Hmm.
That would be the commentary,
Like.
right? The commentary is, hey, in real life, sexism is bad, right? Like men, if we're saying men dominate society, then them treating women as lesser is wrong, right? That would be like the commentary. Because now it's like, we're going to flip it and show you that when it's flipped, it's just as wrong. right? That would be like the commentary. Like the just like when TNG did this and they had the women dominate society where they treated men as arm candy. It's like, see, it's wrong when it's this way, so that means it's wrong when it's the opposite way. That's the commentary. Here it's like, no, no, no. These women treat their men as if they're like pets. And that's fine. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, well, okay then. Yeesh. Let's move on. And again, like this scene's useless. It's literally just a bonding scene between Hanik and Kira. Kira gives Hanik the dress that she was pointing at in the store, and Hanik is like, "Why'd you give me this?" And she's like, "Oh, well, you seem like you liked it." And she's like, "I thought it was the ugliest thing in the world." And then Kira's like,
And they
"Oh, then
bond.
that makes two of us because I also thought it was ugly. I was just trying to be polite." And they laugh about that, and that's the scene.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, for a show that's basically being like, hey, Kira, former freedom fighter, now like badass major, working on DS9. Hey, Hanik, from a society where women are treated as the superiors. How are we gonna get these two women to bond? Let's have them talk about clothes. Like, I mean, you can. I just feel like it's a little stereotypical.
Yeah.
I feel like you could have done something
Yeah.
better. Like maybe they're talking about like the nature of leadership, and they have like some sort of discussion about that. But it's like, no, they're like, oh my god, it's such an ugly dress. Like I know, oh my gosh, girl. It's like that's what it is, and I'm like, okay, that's the scene. We learned that the screen people participate in what's polygamy's for like if men have multiple wives, right? What's the term for like if
N-
a woman has like multiple husbands?
No,
Oh,
polygamy is yeah, it still works. The practice or custom of having more than one wife or husband at the same time.
oh, okay. For some reason,
Polygamy would
I thought there was a different term for like if one woman
no,
did multiple. Okay, either way, it doesn't matter. But
yeah, no. I mean, there
point,
might be a more specific term for each one, but the general broad term is polygamy.
yeah.
Like, yeah,
While it's still in the background, I don't think the sort of sexism subplot comes up anymore after this. Like not really.
hmm
Like we see the men are aggressive, and we see that like women are their leaders, are solely their leaders, but it doesn't actually come up after this. So that's like the end of that plot line. Um, uh, Anyway, then we get to a scene where Jake and Nog are chilling out, sitting on the promenade. They see the Scream boy who's like trying to like
Oh,
he runs to a table that like previously had food and he eats off it and they kind of like laugh at him like what the hell man like this guy's he's just running around grabbing food out of like trash bins.
yeah.
You were about to say something?
I found out the terms. Polygyny is multiple wives for a single man, while polyandry is a woman with multiple husbands.
Okay, so I was
So
right.
yeah,
There are different terms, but yes.
yeah, yeah.
Holowix is right again. That's one for me and like 30 for you in terms of linguistic arguments. Yes.
Well, well, no, no, no. You thought polygamy was the one for multiple wives, but it's polygon.
No, I said
Hang on,
I said polygamy was one man, multiple spouses, and I was thinking what was the word for the opposite because I thought there was multiple words. Yeah, but polygyny is like polygyny is the other one. But I was right about there being multiple words. That was my point.
and then
So we have the scene where Jake and Nog are laughing at this guy and making fun of him. That's that scene. That's over. Oh, we do learn one thing that's an ongoing plot line that I'm a little unsure about. I need to check something real quick. How old is Jake in DS9?
uh, hang on.
Because this is
Illustrate.
kind of important.
At the end of the series, in the season 2 episode Shadow Play, which is this, season about like, I can't remember I think 7 episodes from now, maybe I can't remember. He is 15. It's stated his
So
age is 15 in Shadow Play.
currently he is 14.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Well, so yeah, currently he's 14 because Shadow that one hasn't happened yet, right? So
yeah,
this episode or this scene, Nog learns that Jake is dating a Dabo girl.
yeah.
I don't like the Dabo girls are just the women who spin the
The
Dabo
wheel.
wheel. Now, I guess they're not like strippers or anything, so I guess they could be like younger, but I always imagine they were
Mhm.
18 at minimum because the idea is you want like an attractive woman to like entice people to gamble, right? It's like, ooh, look at this, like, actual casinos do that, right? They will put like attractive like women up front to like get people to like go come in and then gamble, right? Um, if this woman is 18 and she's dating a 14-year-old,
14, 15. Yeah, it's not.
this is a
Yeah.
really weird like thing, and it's not like
Cisco brings
addressed.
it up in another episode.
Yes,
It's just.
but I will say also I will point out it says she oh, hold on. I need to point out he does end up dating her. But right now he's not. Um
Mhm.
that doesn't make it much better because I think he still ends up dating her by at least when he's 15. But in this episode he's only helping her with her homework. I guess maybe she's younger than 18. I don't know. You know what? This is a weird fucking subplot. I don't want
Either
to.
way, it's like if she's 18 and up, it's like, ooh, that's bad. If she's under 18, we're now looking at Quark like, no, Quark.
Yeah, like we're getting into that we're getting into the Star Trek Voyager element with the one character who is 1 years old, but like a fully grown
We don't
adult
talk about
that we
we don't
don't
talk
talk
about
about.
it. I
We don't talk about that. Star Trek, stay classy. Um, either way, Jake is developing a relationship with a Double Girl. That's a weird subplot that I don't want to talk about. So we get to the next scene, which is the one that this happens because there's yeah, more and more people are coming through the wormhole. Uh, hold on, I'm trying to see like what they're trying to do. Oh, and Hanik's trying to like comfort these people, and this is something that I think is actually like a very uncomfortable scene. So they play upbeat music as the promenade floods with the Screen people. Um,
hmm
the Screen people are running around, they're looking at things, and then at one point, uh, Odo is talking to Cisco, and Odo's like yelling at them, slow down, there's no running in the promenade. It's going to get awfully crowded around here, Commander. And Cisco says, it's worth it. Just look at them. They're experiencing the first taste of freedom. Um, it's hard to show because they really can only show some stills. Um, the residents of DS9 look terrified. Um,
Yeah, because these just a swarm.
this
It's
like
like,
I'm trying to show an image of it. Like DS9, you get a general feeling of how populated any given time is. It's about like twice, if not three times more populated right now. They're letting, I suppose, like select numbers of the 3 million people onto the station at any given time. Like, yeah, you're allowed to get off your ship and stretch your legs a bit, right?
mhm.
Um, now they play like heartfelt and upbeat music, but when you look at the residents of DS9, they look confused and scared. Um, if you literally just change the music of this scene to like horror music, it changes the scene entirely. Um,
Mhm.
this scene is actually important for the plot line. We'll talk about it. But yeah, you have all these refugees coming in, and the residents look scared because you just allow them to flood onto the promenade. Uh,
Mhm.
and it's like you play upbeat music and you say it's fine, and see, it's their first taste of freedom. Isn't that great? I'm like, I don't, I don't know. This seems like really kind of scary for some of these people, and these people are like, this is their home. Were they told about this? Were they told? By the way, all these people are going to show up, and they don't have money, they don't have resources. Most of them are not necessarily going to be able to communicate super well, and also it's stated that 50% of the population is overly violent. Like, I know
Like,
they threw it off. I knew they threw it back as a joke of like, oh, the men are too stupid to be involved in normal situations. They just like fighting and being violent. It's like, so you let them on the station? They like fighting and being violent.
yeah,
Like, ugh.
yeah.
If you're trying to make a commentary on males, yeah, sure, men tend to be more aggressive than women, but like, you know, we can control ourselves. Can these people? Like, you've only said they're too aggressive to participate in like important conversations, and you're just gonna flood them onto the space station.
Mhm.
This is
Mhm.
again, you just got to change the music in the scene, and you change the scene entirely.
Mhm.
But then Nog gets in trouble because he hit some of the Screen people with a stink spray, and Odo basically like arrests him and turns him in because like, and now the Screen kid, because this is the kid who showed up originally. He was the daughter of or Hanik, or he's the son of Hanik. But yeah, Odo or Quark just basically no, not Quark. Nog just sprayed him with a stink spray, and that's that. Uh, that
Mhm.
scene's over. That's really irrelevant. But I do kind of like this next scene a little bit. Nog's in the security office, and he's kind of just chilling with Odo, and he's waiting
Mhm.
for his
Mhm.
father to come pick him up, and he's just like looking at the most wanted things, like, "Ooh, this is a new one. What's this person?" It's like, "Oh yeah," it's like, uh, and this is where it kind of comes into effect that like Nog and Odo seem to have almost like a dynamic between them because Odo is using Nog to get information on Quark.
Just
He's basically baiting Nog. Like when Nog is like, "Oh, this guy's one in 7 star systems for illegal weapon sales. It's like very profitable." It's like, and how would you know that? It's like my uncle told me. It's like, so what else does your uncle say about illegal weapon sales?
hmm.
Like it's kind of funny.
And
I don't know why. It's like Odo is like weirdly like Odo seems generally pretty kind to Rom, despite the fact that Rom is technically being held until his father comes and picks him up for assaulting another person on the station. I don't know. I kind of liked the minor dynamic. Quark shows up, and Quark is clearly not punishing the kid, and Odo realizes that, and he's like, make sure he doesn't do it again. But Quark is like, of course, I will make sure he doesn't do it again, and I will make sure he is sorry for it. And Odo's like, sure. Um,
sure.
and then Quark complains about the screens. They literally come in, they touch everything. Their skin flakes off everywhere, and they don't have any money to buy anything. So they're kind of just like scaring off my customers. And Odo says, "I don't care." It's like, I mean, I get you don't care, but these people are kind of causing a menace to the station. But you know what?
Like
Fine.
Odo, they are being not just a
I get it's
nuisance.
here's if it was anyone else other than Quark, I would like you need to do something. Quark, clearly you two have like this rapport where you're just like, I don't care that you suffer. Like,
I mean, that's kind of everyone's rapport with Quark right now. It's like, fuck you. You
uh,
are a
also,
fucking.
I gotta admit that like their gross skin flakes everywhere. It's like legitimately, I'm getting skeeves just like listening to that.
Yeah.
The whole station is covered in skin flakes. Uh,
Yeah.
let's see. We do get the meme image of like Odo. I'm trying. Let's see if I can get a nice image where he just holds like his data pad down. And he gives like a nice little smile to Quark, like haha, nan boo boo, you're suffering. Um,
Yeah.
I'm trying to
Just
get the image of it. Where's the like where he just gives a little smile because I want that to be the thumbnail.
I love how we
Uh,
had not even gone through the actual fucking problem with this episode in terms of
yes, everyone needs to understand the plot of the episode hasn't happened yet. It's
what
so
is the
stupid.
conflict? It's
Yes,
been like an hour
we're
and
20 we're
30
26
minutes.
we are 26 minutes into this episode in terms of like discussing it. The central conflict has not even come up yet. um
Oh God,
this
let
is a
it be
bad
over.
episode. All right, let's see what else we're gonna say about this. uh so for no reason in particular, Hanik is made the leader of the final stage of the great journey. Basically all the leaders gather, and they're like, you're the one who was the first through the eye, clearly fate has chosen you, blah blah blah, you must lead us the rest of the way. I'm like, okay, so I understand that you people are all stupid, but did the leaders really just put her in charge of this very important mission?
Yes.
Like, here's the thing, we've sometimes criticized the Bajorans for some elements of their faith, right? Like sometimes they seem to let their faith almost get in charge of like get in the way of practicality. And there's a discussion to be
Mhm.
had. Generally, the faith of the Bajoran people is well developed enough that I believe it when they might make a impractical decision because of what their faith demands of them, right?
Mhm.
That makes sense because you've taken time to explore it. You've shown how important the faith is to the Bajoran people, holding them together. Um, You've not done that for this group. And you just had all the leaders cede authority to this woman for the final stage of them finding their home world.
Hmm.
It's yeah, it's kind of shit. I'm not gonna lie. I'm kind of sitting here thinking like, you know, these people aren't making good decisions. Either way,
Yeah.
they give her authority
Yeah.
to make this whole decision. Uh, then that musician comes in and he gives Hanik a little data like recorder of his of one of his like concerts, because he's like, oh, my people, we've suffered too. I know your people are suffering, but just have faith. Your people will be strong. I hope this is like I hope this like song can like give you some small comfort, right? Like he's just trying to be nice, right? Um, it's a kind thing. It's like, hey, from one suffering species to another, like we acknowledge you and we see the struggle you're going through and we want to help, right? Um, she then uses that to study
Ooh.
Bajor. She uses that as a justification to study Bajor. Um, and that's where we're gonna get to the plot. But you were about to say something.
Oh, I was just gonna say like, ooh, you're gonna regret that sentiment you shared before. You're gonna regret
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
buddy.
you're gonna really regret that. I guess we get a minor resolution. Those Skrean like boys come and beat the crap out of Nog, um, and
Yeah.
Jake, and then Quark gets in and he has to step in and they fight and that's the scene. Conflicts are brewing. Ugh, I guess so. All right, we're finally at the central plot. We're finally here. We are 32 minutes into the episode. We have 13 minutes of the episode left.
Mhm.
Uh, let's just shotgun it. Hanik says to Kira, "We've discovered where our home world is meant to be." What do they call their home world? They call it starts with a K. What is it? It's like
God.
it's. I'm trying to like check
Uh,
the transcript. I just saw the word. I'm annoyed that I didn't like pick it
Quintana.
up.
Quintana.
Kentana, yeah. So they're like, we're trying to find our Quintana, and we found it. It's Bajor. And Kira is just like floored. Like
Ooh.
Kira's floored. She's like, um, no, like that's our planet. um,
Like, like it is so just me sitting here like, ooh, no, do not even, no,
yeah.
no, 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 no.
Um, now the point they make, and this is what Hanik was doing research into. There is a continent on Bajor that is still unpopulated. The reason it's not
Mhm.
populated is because right now, like we don't know too much of the details of the occupation, but if your population had a huge decrease in number, there might be entire parts of your planet that are just not like repopulated yet.
Yeah,
You might not have the resources and tools. You would have condensed yourself, right? All Bajorans would have
yeah,
gathered on a few major locations so that they can properly rebuild. That would mean a lot of the planet might still be unpopulated. So there's this entire
yeah,
continent that is not populated yet, and the screens are like, we want that planet, or so we want that continent. Now I need to point something out, and this is something very important. Starfleet has been trying to find these people a planet to live on. They have
yep,
found 4 M-class planets to give these people. They're going to
yep,
give them a habitable world.
yep.
Hold on, let me see if I can
Um,
find the exact data. Okay, so uh, Cisco goes and says, Dax, I've been combing through the data on every uninhabited M-class planet in the sector. Uh, we have a few options, but we think that Drathan 2 will be the perfect home for them. Uh, it's a it's near Cephala Prime. It's got definite possibilities, stable orbit, temperature, climate, and very low surface radiation. Uh, Add to the good soil and a long growing season, it's the best bet. So they have multiple M-class planets that are available, and they have one that's like an ideal one. It's uninhabited, an uninhabited planet of Earth-like quality.
yep,
They are giving these people. What do these people say in response? We don't want it. We want the continent on Bajor.
yeah.
Yeah.
There,
When asked why,
there.
they're like, "Well, our faith says that we would find a planet of sorrow, and it would be our duty to save this planet and bring them into prosperity. We can do that. We're farmers. Give us this continent, and we will farm it for you and save your people." And Kira's like, "No, like,
Like, look at how they've acted on the station. Uh huh. Uh huh. Picks up the decline stamp. Just declined on. Just stamp right on the paperwork. Like
I want to get
decline.
some of the I want to get some of the arguments here. So, um, let's see. Hold on. Kira still passes this information along to, I guess, some diplomats from Bajor. Um,
Hmm.
oh, it needs to be pointed out that the musician who was trying to be very nice earlier and like gave the thing, he's like, he goes to meet with Kira and he's like, I
Hmm.
presume Hanik will be at this, like, because he's trying to like cut off Kira right before a meeting. He's like, I presume she'll be at the meeting. She's like, yeah. It's like, please tell her my heart goes out to her and her people. Tell her how much Bajorans everywhere regret having to refuse the request. Like, he is not involved
Yeah.
in the situation at all, and he's like, I need to let you know, I was being nice to her before, but we're not giving her a continent on our planet. Um,
Yeah. Just.
and Kira's like, I mean, we haven't even made a decision yet. Like, Kira seems like kind of awkward because it's like that's not her decision. She's very uncomfortable. She's kind of made friends with Hanik, uh, and he's like, let's see, uh, I wish there was someone who could help them better, but Bajor's in shambles, Kira. You know that as well as I. Like, it's weird that it's in shambles when it didn't seem to be that way earlier, but maybe he's just using a turn of phrase, right? Like, it's still repairing
Yeah.
itself. It's stable, but it's nowhere near what it once was, right? That would be like the
Yeah.
idea I have. Let's see. So, hold on. But let's see. Then they like she has this meeting with the two like officials from the provisional government, and they're saying like, first of all, I want you to know that the provisional government has taken the Screen's request for immigration very seriously. The debate in the Chamber of Ministers became quite heated at times, though I suppose you could say that about all our debates. I have a little bit of a note here. Um, let's see. I had a lot of notes on this.
How many episodes ago was it they nearly had a civil war?
Uh,
Like,
so this is episode 10. Less than or 7 episodes ago was the end of their civil war.
yeah, like the attempted coup, like the
Yeah,
protos
after
revolt.
after
It's like,
50 years, they are 1.5 years, give or take, into their period of freedom after 50 years of like slavery to the Cardassians.
hmm,
Um, so there's a line where she says, "It got heated when discussing to accept 3 million people," and I wrote in my notes, "Yeah, no one fucking like no one would say yes to this." Like, what is it's such a bullshit thing because like literally you're right. Bajor's in shambles. They're struggling to get by. They're struggling to like irrigate a peninsula. Like, it is hard for them to do what they're trying to do to build their own planet back. And suddenly I need to point out the population of Bajor right now is I believe do we know the number of Bajor? I think I was about to say
I
like
don't think we're ever told. The only figure I can think of is when the Cardassian boy, I can't remember his name right now. I feel bad because I liked it. Ruger. Rugel, his name. He said, "Do you know how many people died during the occupation? 50 million. We had a test on it because he was raised by Bajorans, and they're like, no, he's Bajoran to us. He was a bandit. But he brings up like, yeah, 50 million Bajorans died, and it's like, oh wow, okay, so
so
that's a
we
very
have
large
a we
percentage.
have a number 3.8 billion Bajorans.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I mean, 3 million, I guess, is a drop in the bucket here, but
You suddenly are going to drop them on a continent where there's no infrastructure, no nothing, and it's just like, yeah, farm bitch is like, I
yeah,
no, that is a huge,
oh yeah, it's a huge thing. This is a complicated discussion to be had about like the nature of refugees, and this is where like you and I were getting worried about talking this episode, right? Um,
yeah,
but I think everyone would agree that if a country had just got out of a 50-year occupation, they had
yeah,
literally like a few months ago they were dealing with their own civil war that almost tore them apart, and that they are
yeah,
regularly like under threat of famine and starvation. They're in a famine right now. It's mentioned in this episode.
yeah,
When 3 million people show up at the doorstep and they don't want to take them in, Bajor's in the right.
yeah.
The problem Pike and I have with this episode, here's the key part: the episode says Bajor's in the wrong. Like
Yeah,
we need to let that sit. Yeah, we need to let that sit for a second. Is you have
everyone, I need you to understand. I am a poli sci major. I am a history major. Poli sci, it's really just figuring out allocating resources through the political process efficiently. Some people are going to be mad. Historical research, yeah, like a lot of research into how politics. If Bajor were to take these people, immediately you have a whole just a fucking ticking time bomb of just like, how do we, like, you cannot manage this. They're barely managing as it is with the Federation. It, like, me looking at the historical record of like how it's gone on our planet, and it's like, yeah, like, I'm assuming the Bajorans are as good as we were, are as good as we are now, right? It's like, yeah, no, they could not handle it because it's like they are teetering on societal collapse. They cannot do this. It's just not like, you have to
Well, hold
give
on.
so many.
It's even worse. This is the equivalent of someone comes to your table saying that they are hungry, right? Like you're sitting at a restaurant, they come to the table saying they're hungry, and you're like,
Yeah,
"Oh, well, I don't owe you anything, but here's what I'll do.
yeah,
I'm gonna buy you a meal, and I'll give it to you." And they look at you and say, "But I wanted your French fries."
yeah.
It's like,
Well, it's
I,
even,
no, look, they're giving these people a planet.
yeah,
That cannot be
and
understated. I need to point out, Star Trek. Here's the thing: it's always been very nebulous. How many like habitable worlds are there? Right? They just have like very vague M class planets, right? Like the idea of how many planets could people with humans, right? How many planets
yeah,
could we realistically live on in the galaxy, right? Now, there's probably an absurd number. I don't even want to say a number because I'd probably be wrong by like 10 degrees, right? In terms of
mm,
like a magnitude, I'd be wrong by like a magnitude of 10. There's a lot of
yeah,
planets in the galaxy we would be able to just go to, but how many of those planets have like bacteria that we're not inoculated to? How many of those planets have
yep,
like a level of radiation that we're not inoculated to? How many of those planets would we be able to survive on reasonably? Probably a
yeah,
lot less. Now, in Star
yeah,
Trek, they are always very vague, right? It's an M class world, right? That means we can
yeah.
go on it, right? That's what, in Star Trek, the original series, they would just like teleport onto the planet in their spandex suits, right? It's like, oh, do you have any like protective wear? It's like, no, because it's an M class world. Don't worry about it. Like,
No, it's fine because those are just clones of. Remember, every time you go in the teleporter, you die, and then they reconstruct you from
look,
your
look, look,
data.
look, look, look,
More
look.
likely, they're
Pike,
not
you
factoring in the
can't.
data from the planet.
You're complicating my point. The point is, we don't know how many habitable worlds there are in the Star Trek universe. There might be
Mhm.
there might be tens of thousands that are just perfectly habitable and we haven't done anything with yet because our populations aren't high enough, right? Like there's a few times in TNG that we've seen that there are colonies on planets, like a single colony on a planet, right? Like this planet's
Mhm.
habitable and a group of people colonized one part of it, but that's just one group of people, right? There's still a lot of a planet that has not been inhabited yet, right? These people show up and they're being given a planet. They're not happy with it. They want Bajor. It's like
Yep.
they're like it's so absurd. And the reason they want it is because of their religious views.
Yep. Yeah, I was gonna get, like, me looking at the Bajorans' religious situation and like how often, like,
Oh,
it comes up
don't
in
even
the
get me
plot.
started.
Like,
Don't even get me started. Like we're about to. I don't know if it would be a great idea, and we're not going to talk about real life things, Pike. We're not going to talk about real life things, but to throw one
I was
religious
going.
group, onto a planet with another hyper religious group, I don't know if that would be super good. Let's
A
be
hyper
fair.
religious people who have known extremists who want to kick off all non-Bajorans. And also this population that's coming onto the planet are going to have like a superiority inferiority complex of like, we need help, but also we're going to save your planet. Like, we're the best. And it's
I,
like,
I mean, I
and
mean,
that's
it
ingrained
needs. Yeah,
in their religious text. And I'm like,
yes.
oh my god,
I mean,
immediate, it's just like nights out. They are going to murder
I
each other.
I need
And,
to point out the leadership of this entire group of people, these 3 million people. The leadership just gave just gave Hanik the leadership role for where they get to live because of their religious beliefs. That's
yep,
how strong their convictions are. This, like, here's the thing. We've actually seen, like, some Bajorans who, while they believe in the faith of the prophets, right, they're still a little bit more pragmatically minded, right?
yeah,
They'll have some elements of, well, we need to function, right? Like, we're
they're
not gonna, like, we're not
yeah,
gonna
they're
entertain certain, like,
culturally
yeah,
they're
it's a
culturally Bajoran. but they're not strict to the religion,
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
Like
like
the priest.
Kira's religion is super important to her, right? But
Yeah.
from other Bajorans we've seen, maybe it's a little bit less important. Maybe some have more importance. The point is, like, there's some amongst them that are like, if you told me the prophet said I shouldn't be the leader of Bajor, I'm not going to listen to them,
Hmm.
right? Like Kai Wynn, or Vedic Wynn, like, or
Yeah.
like she is like if Cisco is the emissary of the prophets and he doesn't like her, right? They believe he is like the person who can interact with their gods. You'd think
Hmm.
that him not liking her would be like, you know, that would just destroy her in terms of like her potential to actually like lead, right?
Hmm.
But there are some people who don't buy into it as much, right? There's some people like, yeah,
Yeah.
you know, I don't care that the prophets chose you and you don't like me. I'm still going to try and gain political power, right?
Yep.
And now here's the thing: the entire leadership of the Skrian people ceded their authority to decide where their planet is to this one farmer woman because she found this place by luck because it contorts with their religious beliefs. That's fine to a degree. I'm not necessarily criticizing that. But that says something about their culture, right? This is a very hyper faith based religious group who have not necessarily complementary religious views to another religious group that would be on Bajor, aka the Bajorans.
Yeah. Like
I don't
the
think this
other,
would not
like,
be a healthy relationship.
yeah, it would not. I'm just sitting here thinking like, man, oh man, it's a good thing the Prime Directive is right there preventing anyone from saying it because holy shit, if it was not there, immediately Cisco pulls Kira aside. Is like, you need to get them to not go to your planet because otherwise, we know the historical track record of this sort of thing. You're not joining the Federation anytime because you are going
Well,
to have like a
uh,
like a planet
there's
wide conflict.
there's a few more issues. We have a few more issues to cover here, but let's talk about the one you just brought up. It is a hard rule in Star Trek universe to be a part of the
Hmm.
Federation. You need to be a unified planet under one government.
Yep.
So
Yep.
like there's a planet in I believe TNG that they basically were lying that they were unified to get Federation membership. They were like one step away from Federation membership, but it turns out there was an entire faction of them that did not want to be part of the Federation, and because they weren't unified, like the Federation had to say no. They're like, look,
Mm.
you're not a unified people. We can't invite you into our group. That's a rule of ours. You have to be a unified planet, right?
Yeah.
You're about to have a secondary group of people who are going to live on their own continent. They're going to have their own culture, their own way of life. Um, if they exist on that planet and they're not subsumed by the Bajoran government and under the Bajoran government's authority, Bajor is not allowed in the Federation.
Yeah.
Bajor is trying to get in the Federation. That's Cisco's whole job.
Yeah.
So, like, and this is where that argument's not even proposed in the episode. The argument they proposed in the episode
Yeah.
is the continent that they want is suffering from a famine, and like Hanik is like, look, our people are farmers. We can save that continent. It's like, first off, no, you fucking can't. You don't know anything about like the biology, the botany or biology of Bajor. How are
Agriculture.
you? Yeah, you're right. I completely blanked on that word. You don't know anything about the agriculture of Bajor. You don't know anything about anything on Bajor. Like, even if you, all of your scientists, which I assume some of them are with you, if you have 3 million people, some of them must be like your farmers, right? So I'm assuming you have some knowledge of basic
Yeah.
agriculture, but that's agriculture for a different planet.
Yeah. Here's
Like,
the thing. Um, it's not just that. So we're talking about all the stress and such of the everyone be aware agriculture is like one of the most stress inducing industries to work in just because of how wild like every planting season and like harvest can be just because of weather and such. Like there's a reason why farmers often have like many undiagnosed like mental afflictions born simply of their work because it is just so stress inducing. And we have this population where 50% of them are fucking room temperature IQ, and that's the best get. That's the best estimation for them, right? Um,
yeah,
and the other half are, the leadership and such, but they're possessed of a strong religious conviction that, again, like, yeah, if they like they're gonna have a let's say they do succeed, it's like, oh yeah, we needed help, but we also saved your asses, so fuck you, we're better. But then if they fail, it's like I fully believe like they would turn and say the Bajorans are to blame, and it's like it's just enhanced by
Well,
the sheer
I I
stress
mean
of
I don't.
agriculture.
You're 100% right. That is probably what would happen. Even if we just go
Yep.
by what is said in the episode, though, the whole point
Mm.
The Bajorans are saying they don't want the Screen people living on their planet is they say if you are to suffer, if you aren't able to have a successful farming season, if another famine hits you, uh, the Bajorans would be obligated to help you, and we can't. Like the whole
Yep.
premise, right, is like if you invite someone into your home, you become partially responsible for them, and that's what they're saying is we don't want to accept this responsibility. Is because we're afraid we're not going to be able to follow through on it. The Bajorans are arguing from an entirely like generous point of view. It's like we wish we could help you. We wish we could invite you on, but we can't. We're sorry.
Mm.
And
I
it's so like it's so hard to explain. Like we've had all these different arguments for why this doesn't work in setting based on the rules of the setting, for why this wouldn't work based on real historical events and how like similar things would have gone. But at the end of the
Mhm.
day, if we just go by what the episode says, that argument is entirely valid. The Bajoran people are generally pretty kind, right? They're very
Yeah.
faithful. They're very humble. They tend to be very like generous and put others forward, and they have a strong sense of right and wrong due to the fact that for 50 years they have been abused by a group of people that are generally considered pretty bad. So they've developed sort of an
Mhm.
antithetical, like we're like the opposites of the Cardassians in a lot of ways, and the Cardassians are like hyper fascists. That's how the DS9 is like
Yeah.
structured, right? So the Bajoran people are very with their faith being such a strong thing and them having like such a belief in that faith and that faith having tenets of like generosity and charity. If these people were suffering, they would help these people even at the cost of
Mhm.
themselves. But they know that about themselves so well that they don't want to put themselves in a situation when they can just give these people a different planet.
Yeah. Like
Again, it can't be stressed enough. This is the equivalent of, there's a homeless man sitting outside. He's cold, he's sick, he's dying, and you're like, hey man, I see that you're suffering. I want to help you. I own 2 houses. I'm going to give you one. Not to rent, not to use for a period of time. It's yours. Free of charge. And that person says, I don't want it. I want to live in your living room. It's it's
it,
so bad.
it's not just that bad. It's also the fact that like the Federation is the ones giving them to them. You know for a fact the Federation is going to help them plenty if they just take the fucking planet, and so they
I
have
mean,
a no fa- like a no
even if they
fail
didn't,
option.
these people are okay being given a continent with no help. You know, like uh crap, hold on. Hanik, she says that if they suffer from a famine, like when Bajor presents the idea that if you guys are suffering, we would be obligated to help you. Like Hanik says, we would not expect you to help us. Like I want to get her exact words. Um, yeah, I thought I made it that clear. We're not expecting your help. She says this to the Bajoran ambassador.
Mhm.
Like, uh, and when they say like, oh, by our projections that there's no way you're going to be able to like develop enough food to like take care of yourself, let alone help us as you say you want to. Like her statement is projections can be wrong. It's like, bitch, this is agriculture. Projections, I mean, are the best thing we have. Hey,
Yeah,
how much is the farming season gonna yield? Oh, 1,000,000 bushels of wheat. It's like, oh, well, that projection could be wrong. It might be 5 bushels of wheat. It might be 10 million bushels of wheat. It's like they're not that varied. You might get like a few or more, a few less, but you're not gonna get like a completely disparate number.
like unless everything goes super fucking well for you, their projection says you fail. Like you would need such like it's one of those things like so these projections, folks, will have like a range. It's not like as Hollow said, 5 million. Not to say you're wrong, Hollow. It's just like, uh, I
Yeah.
want to head off like an argument someone might make up like, oh, like, didn't pipe. So there's like a range of like this is what we should expect based on this start date and this end date, date that we start plowing and planting and stuff, and then assuming these weather conditions. I'm assuming they gave them the best fucking like either they gave them a fairly standardized thing of like here's what the weather is, here's what we did in the past, right? Based on that, or they assume the best circumstances, to be generous, right? Which don't do that in this sort of circumstance, but assuming and they're just like, yeah, no, like there's just no
Yeah, I'm
way.
gonna cut you off there. We don't even have to pretend that they gave him the best projections. They gave him the most generous projections. Hanik's argument is the projections could be wrong, right? She's not
Yeah,
saying based on our own projections this is possible, right? She's not saying that. She's saying no, 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 you're wrong. It's like, did you want to hear their argument more? Maybe it could come out that they were actually giving very like bleak projections, like the
yeah.
lower twenty
It's just a
percent.
refusal to argue. It's a refusal to argue at all.
Yeah,
Like it's just yeah.
like
It's
there's a
just
possibility. Like I guess there's a possibility, right, that these two like ambassadors are like, look, we don't want these people there. We foresee future problems, so we're going to give them a very low projection, right? Just
mhm.
so we have an argument of like, yeah, you're very unlikely to help us. When it's like, oh, maybe Hanik has her own projection that would counter that. She doesn't. She just says your projections could be wrong. It's not an argument.
Hmm. Yeah.
It'd be like, hey, Pike, I bet you if I went out today, I could go be like an expert farmer. I've never been a farmer a day in my life. I don't know the first thing about running a massive agriculture thing, but I'm built different. I could do it. And you're like gonna look at me like, Hollowix, you're an attorney. No, you're not gonna be able to just go out and be a farmer. You're not gonna be a Dwight Schrute here. And I'm gonna be like, I'm built different. It's like,
See, here's the thing. I can fully believe with like a year or two, you could definitely be a Dwight Schrute, but like right off the back, it's like, ooh, I hope you have savings, but you're gonna have to learn. You're gonna have to
well, I
learn
mean,
fast.
I think you're being overly generous for a year or two. No, no, no. Like, I'm not that smart, man. Like, I'm not that smart. I'm not that hardworking when it comes. Like, if you told me, oh, you could totally be a farmer, I'm like,
Yeah,
I don't. I think that ship has sailed. I'm a little bit like, I don't think I could go out and be a farmer today. Right? I don't have that background in it.
yeah,
I don't think I could be a gardener sometimes. So you know what? Like, I don't think I could be a farmer. Now, these people, sure, maybe they're farmers, right? Maybe they have the ability to turn a barren continent into a fertile breadbasket. That
hmm
nothing has been presented in the episode that suggests that,
hmm
right?
It's just like
I
have
think if you want,
faith. It's like faith
if you
is
want
good
to,
for religion. It's not good for politics and like resource management. Like
I mean, here's the
I
even
can't just make.
I
Uh,
think the best thing you could do for this episode is you present the fact that the Haniks have some technology or they have some farming technique or farming ability that transcends what every other culture has. That's what you'd have to
mhm.
do to be like, they're the greatest farmers of the Gamma Quadrant, right? You'd have to say that. Because then it'd be like, oh, I guess maybe they could turn this barren continent into a fertile one. There would still be issues like that we brought up before, right? The nature of a non-unit, like if they were brought under Bajor's government, would they demand representation in Bajor's government? Would they enforce their views? And literally, the end of season one is the Bajorans want to enforce their views in schools,
Yep.
right? Like that's a huge issue. Would Hanik be like, hey, we want you to teach a little bit of our faith in your Bajoran schools? It's like there are so many
Ooh.
issues that you could push into this series. The screen people could be like, we want representation in your government. We want your schools to teach our faith. We want your schools to teach our history. Meanwhile, the Bajorans are like, oh yeah, we had the same issue last season. It ended up with a school bombing, by the way. Like, it's just one of those things where it's
Yeah.
like, this episode is so divorced, not just from the rest of Star Trek or the rest of DS9. It's divorced from reality.
Yeah.
It's it's
Like
so bad. It's bad. Like there's nothing good to say about this episode except for maybe one or two lines out of context. Um
hmm.
so it needs to be pointed out. Let's see. Oh yeah, there's a scene. It's a very stupid one. Jake is talking to Tumak, the son of Hanik,
Hmm.
and let's see. Uh, Jake is trying to apologize for Nog. He's like, hey, look, I'm sorry about Nog. He's a good guy when you get to know him. And Tuvok is like, oh yeah, the big-eared troll. He's really your friend. First off, just some good old-fashioned racism from these people as well, by the way. Um,
No.
and
So to
Jake,
be fair, he said specifically about Nog. He didn't say about all Ferengi.
dude, he
But
called him
yeah,
a big-eared troll. Like, I mean, it sounds like you're referring to his appearance, but oh, sure. You know what? Maybe it's just Nog. Maybe it's just Nog. Maybe he's using the internet term troll, right? It's like it wasn't invented at this period of time, probably, but maybe he is. Maybe he's calling him like a troll. I don't know.
I yeah.
I think he's referring to him as like a deformed short person, right? He's like, oh yeah, you're a little troll, you're a little gremlin, you're a monster, right? It's like either way. Jake says, "Hey, my dad says you guys are going to Draylon too. I heard it's a nice planet." And he's like, "Oh, your dad does say that?" And Jake's like, "Yeah, sounds like a nice place." He's like, "Huh? Do you want to move there?" And Jake's like, "No." And Tuvok's like, "Well, neither do I." And then he walks away as if that's some sort of victory. It's like, bitch,
Yeah.
why would Jake? Like the whole point. I wrote this in my notes. Is you guys are given a planet for your whole culture to live on and call your own. That's different from one person going to move to a planet to just live there. Like Jake is one person, right? Like he
Yeah.
has no reason to want to go to Draylon 2. You have every reason to want to go there. It could be a homeworld for your people.
Yeah.
But
You
then
get it
again,
for
hold on.
free. Like
Yes, but remember, this is a male. They don't generally deal in these circumstances. This scene is presented as like a moral victory for Tumok, saying like, you guys want to push us on this one planet so much, but you yourself don't want to go. Meanwhile, the episode says not only are the males too stupid to deal with these issues, but also like he presents a stupid argument. It's
God just
like I said, the morals in
uh
this episode are legitimately repulsive. Like this is like you tried to present an idea about the state of like let's drop the curtain here, right? This is obviously an
yeah.
analogy for this. If I recall, this episode is representative of an actual like refugee crisis that sort of happened. Um, it's supposed to be at least, right? But we can just talk about the general state of like accepting refugees into your country, right? I think it's a hot button political debate. I don't want us to like weigh one way or the other, right? But there's always going to be logistics and problems that you need to consider, right?
Mhm.
Like, is there anywhere else for these people to go? That's one question you have, right? Because if someone's homeland is destroyed, let's just say we have the country of like Holowixia, right? Due to a series of massive natural disasters and then a conflict of civil war and war, you have 1 million people from Holowixia displaced and they need to go somewhere else, right?
Mhm.
What do you do? Well, one thing you do is you try and find other places for them to go. Now, like there's a lot of logistics that are gonna go in there. Are they gonna have homes? Are they gonna be able to work? Do they speak the language? Are they gonna have food? Are they gonna have water? Are they gonna have clean clothes? What sort of medical conditions do we need to consider? All these things are logistics that go into the real world issue of refugeeism, right?
Mhm.
And I think it's whatever you think, right? Helping other people can be a good thing. Maybe you should consider your own people first. These are both arguments that can be presented and talked about. But here,
Mhm.
it is not presented well because these people are being given an entire planet of their own.
Yep.
This is not. Here's
This
the thing. The difference
whole
is this is not a refugee
this
crisis. Like these
Mhm.
people are refugees, yes, but it's not a crisis because they have a place they can go. It's being given to them for free.
Yeah. Yeah. But they want it's like no, we want here. It's like but you have like the story doesn't work in Star Trek because it's just like yeah, we have all these like it a long time ago, Hogs, we were talking about yeah, with how space would work. Like you made the statement like yeah, like we just kind of have infinite resources at that point, like effectively, right? And so there's
Yeah,
not like resource is removed as like a reason for conflict, and a lot of like conflicts are born of resource like management, right?
yeah, of
Uh,
course.
and the underlying, and it's like yeah, there's no this whole story is just like there if there was like hey an actual ticking time bomb of like we need to rush it, it's like sure okay now we have but there's nothing pushing the story to be on a deadline, and so the story doesn't work because it's like you have all the time you need to get them to this planet, and like the only thing pushing the only reason in their not in their favor, but the only reason for them to go to Bajor is for first place they saw, and our religion said so. It just happens to click with it, which everyone be aware. Um, um, I'm a fairly religious person. Of the Abrahamic variety. Anytime someone brings up prophecy to me, immediately red flags. You should think anytime someone brings up prophecy to you in a religious context, a political context, an economic, it's like, hey, do you have any figures to go along with this or anything at all? It's like, no, you just have to have faith in it. And it's like, no, 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 no.
Well,
Red flag. Get just
yeah,
and so
you
there is no reason for them to go to Bayshore. They have other planets. It's not just one. It's not just two. It's not just three. 4 planets. Mom, why do you? I mean, wow, Koreans. Why does the Federation let you have 4 planets? Don't know, but they won't let me have Bajoran continents, so I'm mad. Just I.
it's even worse. So here's like it's even worse. So like the entire premise in real life of a refugee crisis, right, is as you mentioned, it's a matter of resources. It's land, it's food, it's water, it's housing, it's work, right? When you have a massive influx of people, countries and states and all those things are going to hit some level of equilibrium. This is how many people live here, so this is how much work needs to be done to generate enough food. This is how much work needs to be done to generate enough jobs. This is how much work needs to be done to generate enough housing. That's a complete discussion on how effective that all is. But generally, countries will hit an equilibrium. When you have a massive influx of people, that issue becomes a resource problem because now you have more people than you have places to live. You have more people than you might have food. You have more people than you might have jobs. Now, over time, the country will adapt to those more people in theory, right? There's a lot of other issues that are involved, but if it's in terms of the resource issue, that's not an issue here.
Hmm.
And I think the best thing, if you really wanted to present this in Star Trek setting, right, the best thing you could do is you have the screen people arrive, and what I would say is you have to show that the screen people are actually they don't have resources of their own. Maybe they don't have skills. Like they were a slave group, right? So they don't have the ability to govern or lead themselves. They don't know how to function because they were slaves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you say we can give you your own planet, their biggest concern is, well, we don't know how to manage our own planet. So
Mm-hmm.
they need almost like someone's help along the way to hold their hand until they're ready. And that would be the resource issue, right? Is maybe they want to live on like one of the moons of Bajor, right? And they're like, yeah, Bajor, you can help us survive, and we're going to farm for you, and we're going to work for you. And it almost be like they would be putting themselves back into slavery, which would be like maybe one of the conflicts, right? Is
Yeah.
you escape slavery, now you don't know how to rule yourselves because for what was it, 800 years, you've never had a leadership of your own. So now
Yep.
you basically have to jump into another culture to adapt, but that culture's like, but we can't take care of you. We're not ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be, I think, the issue, right? It's like we can give you a planet, and they'd be like, but we don't know how to manage our own planet. And that would be like
Mm-hmm.
the worry, right? Is to them they lack necessary skills to govern themselves, and they need someone to help govern them for them. But then it's like, oh, there's the conflict of you're putting yourselves back into a submissive or a subservient position. You're gonna the people that you want to be controlled by need to take care of you. This is a very complicated thing, but you also have to acknowledge that we can't just put these people on a different planet, right? You can't just
Mm-hmm.
grab someone who has no means of taking care of themselves, give them a farm, and say go farm. It's like, well, I don't know how to
Mm-hmm.
farm, right? That would be the way you'd have to almost present this episode, right? Is the nature of the reason they want to live on Bajor is because they're so afraid of governing themselves because they don't know how to do it. But Bajor doesn't want to help them because Bajor doesn't want the responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that would work either. I think it would be that'd be a very almost problematic like story episode to have in a way. But like you were saying, there's infinite resources in the setting. Star Trek was presented as a post scarcity society.
Mm-hmm.
This just doesn't work. So
Yeah.
uh,
Like they're refusing the planet within a post-scarcity society to go into a very scarcity heavy society and be like, we're your problem now. but we're not going to be a problem. It's like,
Yeah,
no,
we're gonna
no,
save you, and if we can't save you, we'll just die. It's like what?
just
Like literally, they're saying we're willing to take the risk that a famine hits us and we can't support ourselves. It's like, wait a minute, what? It's like, yeah, but you don't have to take care of us. If we die, we die. It's like that just seems irresponsible on your end now. Regardless,
yeah.
I do want to move on because we have another scene that's just garbage. You know,
Oh,
Kira shows up to try and like apologize to Hanik for the Bajorans denying her, and she's like, the thing I don't understand is why you pretended to be my friend. And Kira's like, I wasn't pretending. It's like, so you are my friend until I need you. It's like, I know it's hard for you to see right now, but I'm trying to help. It's like, well, I think you've helped quite enough. It's like she's being such a bitch.
it's like
You
yeah,
betrayed
it's
me,
like
Kira. Like, it's like, oh, I didn't give you a continent, so I betrayed you.
like
You're right. They're
I
so entitled.
God, I be aware, everyone. Be aware. These people, they anger me on so many levels.
This is like, yeah,
I
this is bad. Then we get to another scene, which again, this is actually like pointless to the overall plot to a degree. Um, they suddenly get a call. Hanik's son, Tumak, has stolen a runabout, and he's running to Bajor. The
Yep,
Bajoran government has banned any Skrian from landing on Bajor because they're afraid of these people just landing there and living there and unable to be getting rid of them. Um, as such, some fighter pilots go to like intercept the thing. They're trying to communicate with the fighter pilots. They're trying to communicate with the runabout, but the runabout's communication isn't being hailed. There's a plasma leak on the runabout. They contact like one of the generals of Bajor to tell the fighters to back off. The fighters aren't able to respond in time. The fighters accidentally shoot the plasma leak, and it causes a chain reaction that causes the explosion. And Hanik's son is killed. Tumak is killed. And it's supposed to
yep.
be this huge tragic scene, which it's tragic. She lost a son. It doesn't have anything to do with the plot. It's just supposed to be sad. See, the hatred that Bajor is so steeped in their own hatred, in their own sadness, they're not able to accept our help. And as such, they ended up killing my son because he stole a runabout and that was damaged and wasn't responding to helpful calls and just flew into restricted airspace. Like it's so
Plead
again.
the fifth. I'm not saying anything more. I plead the fifth.
I know, but let's just finish this off. So the final scene happens. The Skrians are leaving to go to the planet they were given for free, and she looks to Kira, and I'm going to read this off. Kira says, I stopped by to wish you luck on Draylon 2. I believe this is the best choice for Bajor and for you. And she says, you still believe we would have been a burden to your people? And Kira's like, yes. Like, I think you made a terrible mistake, all of you. Maybe we could have helped you. Maybe we could have helped each other. The Skrians are farmers, Kira. You have a famine on your planet. Perhaps we could have made the peninsula bloom again. We'll never know, will we? 50 years of Cardassian rule has made you frightened and suspicious. I feel sorry for you. You were right. Bajor is not Cantana. And then she leaves. And that's the last line of the episode. In every sense of the word, that is like the definitive statement, right? No one counters this. There's no contradictory claim. This is the last word. This is the last laugh is you were wrong, Kira.
No,
It's
Kira
bullshit.
was fucking right. Kira
No,
was fucking
here's
right.
the thing.
You know,
Kira is actually like the thing that is worst about Kira here. She doesn't stand up for herself enough. But in terms of how she acts, she's actually very in character. She is trying to help. She is a good person. Yeah. She is trying to help these people. She was friends with I think it was kind of stupid, but she became friends with Hanik. She was trying to help these people. She was even when she was like, I don't believe they should live on Bajor. She was still trying to be open-minded of like, well, maybe the ambassadors will agree and maybe we can work something out. She was trying to make everyone happy and trying to make it work. And
yeah.
I guess that's the closest the opening scene has to go with this is she's trying to do everything for herself, but that's not really that close. It's a stretch at most. And then this woman shits all over her, and Kira just is supposed to like look down and sad, like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Like, look at her. Like, I know you don't have the stream pulled up, right? But it's like it just has Kira.
But I know this thing.
Yeah, it just has Kira standing in the airlock, looking sad as the door closes and the credits roll. It's like you really undermine. Kira is too good for this episode. She's a strong person. Right? I didn't even. I was about to say she's a strong, like, independent woman who don't need no man. But that's undercutting it. She's a strong person, right?
Yeah.
There's no other qualifier needed. She is someone who has been through the worst that anyone could be. She grew up like under occupation. She fought for a rebel alliance as a teenager. She was put in a position that she was not ready for. She struggled. Her faith was challenged. Her belief system was challenged. Her values and morals were challenged. She has gone through so much as a character. She like us rewatching this and discussing this more has definitely risen her in terms of my ranks, right? She's a great
Yeah.
character. Well acted,
Yep.
well written. This episode is poorly written, and she's the one who suffers the most from this. Thank
Yep.
God Cisco wasn't that big of an element of this episode, because they would have ruined him too. Thank God Odo wasn't a big part of this episode. They would have ruined him too. Unfortunately, Kira bears the burden of this as well.
Yep.
This is a
Yep.
garbage episode. Like,
And there are people who give it enough positive ratings that on IMDb it is still a 6.8.
no.
This should
No.
on on the watch guide for like if you look up like a Let's Watch Star Trek episode guide, uh they have a ranking of 1 through 5 with 2 being skippable, like 1 being you should just skip it, 3 being like watch, 4 being watch but stronger, and then 5 like you need to fucking watch this, right? Uh, this is ranked at a 2 by them. The previous episode was ranked at a 1, and I'm just sitting here like, holy fuck. I mean, the last episode was definitely skippable, but I would not skip it. I would not just say like
In
you
all
must
fairness,
skip
in
it.
all so I need to point out,
This,
in all fairness, IMDb does put this at a 6.4, which is one of the lowest rankings for DS9.
yeah, I, everyone be aware. I find our whole thing like as a society where like a 5 is the worst, and then a 6 is like we need like please for the love of God, society, fix yourself where we're actually using the full 1 to 10 scale. Well, 0 to 10,
No,
right?
yeah, I mean, obviously,
But
like that's a completely different discussion where it's the nature of like, honestly, we have to blame almost like the education system because like, an A being good, a B being like okay, and a C being bad has really just like tipped our scales in so many other ways. Because like
yeah, well,
people
it's
think like giving like a 70% to something is bad when it's like no, a 70% is like that should be above, like 50% really in a lot of ways should be average when you're rating like a
yeah,
TV series or show or movie. Like, okay, a 1 would be like absolute trash garbage, doesn't even make sense. There's no logical through line, like time and space are broken. A 10 out of 10 is a perfect product, which might not even exist, but it's a theoretical concept of the perfect show or
yeah.
movie, right? A
You
9
can
is
always
near perfect.
put
Like for
you do
me,
better.
Blind Manor is like a 9 out of 10. Right, and it's the show I
Yeah.
probably praise the most out of every other show. I probably put like Arcane at like an 8 or 9. I have to do a rewatch, but I generally put it very high as well. Right?
Where do you put Scrubs?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah, recently we were talking about Scrubs, and like we kind of agree, like yeah, it's like one of our best show, like favorite shows. And
I think I
now
think
like
I think
does
in
he?
terms of like, so it's hard to tell because like I have to like rewatch specific episodes. It's kind of like what we have to do with DS9, where we have to go to each episode and sort of rate it. But
Mhm.
off the cuff, I'm gonna give Scrubs at minimum of a 7 in my like. There's some episodes that are kind of bad. There's some episodes that are kind of mid. But I don't know. It's kind of like
The
I
only
I want to
major
say like
plot
7 or 8
line.
maybe.
8 sounds good because here's the thing. That show has fucking Kim, and
Oh yeah, I know how you feel about her. But point being is like, you know, um, with the IMDb ratings, because I know like some episodes, like I think it's most episodes score around like the 7 to 8 range for DS9. So something
Mhm.
getting like Move Along Home is notoriously considered the worst episode of DS9. It's not as bad as this. Don't get me wrong. But at least like the thing is, I said it before. Move Along Home is obviously bad, right? Like you could just look at it
Yeah.
and tell that something is wrong there. You could like passively have it on the background, and you're like, "What the fuck is going on? Why are these like space heroes playing hopscotch?"
Yeah,
Like,
but here's the thing. With how bad it is, it's almost like you're watching a train wreck in slow motion, and you're
well,
like,
yeah, yeah,
so that's how
but
little Timmy went through the window when the 7th carriage
but
hit the A.
no, of course.
Oh, that's
But the point being is like it is notoriously the worst episode. It's not actually the worst episode. The worst episode of season 1 is Dax. Um,
yeah.
but the point is, it is still given a 5.8, almost a 6.
Hmm.
So like that episode should probably be probably like a 2 or 3 on my rating scale. It's pretty bad. Um,
Hmm.
this episode this episode falls easily in a similar realm. Like again, there's not like a lot of overt writing issues in terms of like what is like the cause and effect of events. Like it follows a through line. The problem is it's not developed enough. It's not like there's not
It's
a lot of
so
logic. This is
fucking slow to like. It's not development. Like the first half of it is just like I like. Here's the thing. I'm not saying minute one into the problem, right? I'm not saying that, but you need to get to the problem. Like,
oh yeah.
what
I
is the
mean,
conflict within like 5 minutes?
part of
Okay, what is the
part of the benefit part of the benefit that Star Trek has always had is they start with the captain's log, which usually
hmm,
introduces the conflict of the episode. Right? It's like
yeah,
we've encountered a strange probe in this quadrant and we're going to examine it. Right? And then when
yeah.
they get to the
It's like
probe, the plot starts. Right? It's the idea
yeah,
of this episode should have started as a damaged ship has flown through the wormhole. We beamed people aboard, but unfortunately, their translators are not working. So we have to help take care of these people
yeah.
until we can figure out what happened. And then you start with that one scene of them trying to like get the people to the medical ward, and then you move into the actual plot. But point is,
Yeah.
this
Listen,
plot line,
no,
like
no,
we
no.
said, doesn't. Okay, go on.
There are two ways to start an episode, people. You can either do a cold open where it's like some sort of scene that's like maybe funny, maybe it's just like the whole like Kira finds out her report from Ducat and gets mad about it, like a little bit dramatic, like she thinks she's you can reveal something, or you do what Star Trek usually does. You do what Star Wars does. You have the captain's log, you have the opening crawl to set the stage, and then boom, the play starts. We are into it. We have the problem. Go.
Yeah, I mean,
Like
100%. Like
don't
as
fucking
much as I
piddle dally. Go ahead.
no, sorry, piddle dally. But so I think like yes, this plot line doesn't even start until like the 35-minute mark. Um, and then it just does not have enough time to develop what it's trying to present as the central issue, right? Again,
Hmm.
we've presented some alternatives for how you could get this sort of issue to work, and you still hit on the same sort of central idea of like refugeeism and all that sort of like all those ideas, right? You can still talk about all those things, the positives, the negatives, the merits of them, the demerits of them, but you need to do it better. This is why. Here's the thing. I remember I was talking to my old coworker, a friend of mine, about how I view TV shows because he and I were like discussing, I think like the MCU, um, and he was like, "Look, I just don't like view shows the way you do," and that's fine, right? If you don't view shows the way I do,
Yeah.
I'm not saying like you're viewing them wrong, but part of the reason why you and I break down every minute, every line of dialogue, every character interaction of DS9 is because those trees make the forest, right?
Yep.
The good episodes are good, not just because they have that big dramatic moment where Cisco raises his glass and says, "I'll do it again," right?
I'll do it again.
Those episodes are good because you have built up a character, and those characters have traits, and those traits can be looked at and analyzed and pointed to and said, "Look, this is when it's consistent. This is when it's not. When it's consistent more than it's inconsistent, it's generally good. When it's always
Sorry, I'm just
consistent, it's great."
imagining. I'm just imagining Cisco covered in blood at the War Crimes Tribunal, and he just goes, "Yuck, I'll do it again," like Goofy does in the one meme where he's
I'll
on
do it
trial for
again.
murder.
Exactly. Point is, Cisco, like Kira, Odo, they have traits, they have character aspects, they have motivations. All these things can be picked at, analyzed, torn apart until they're at their smallest molecule, and you sift it through until you get the smallest bit of them and see, is it consistent? Is it accurate? And if it is, that's a check mark in the positive section, right? And every little bit of this builds into the greater story. This episode didn't give a shit about that, right?
Yep.
As you said, it piddle dallied around. It piddled around, it dilly
Then it
dallied.
pisses on the setting, and it pisses on Kira to push this fucking
Oh,
moral that
hold
does
on. No,
not work.
what I'm trying to say is I'm not trying to say what actually happened. I'm trying to say what they were intending, right? So
Mm,
they wanted to present a let's say they wanted to present an intelligent discussion about the nature of refugees and taking them in or not taking them in and what that means and how you should view it and who should be the person who is who is like how should like the natives of Bajor interpret the refugees coming to their planet, right? How should they talk to them about it? How should they look at this issue? You need to really develop it. I liked the idea I had of what if you had this group of people who they were slaves for 800 years. They managed to get freedom due to luck because the Dominion showed up, and now they're looking for a home. But they've been slaves for 800 years. They don't know how to run society on themselves. They don't know how to govern. They've never run an election themselves. You know, you can have all these elements that were like they don't know how to function. If Starfleet or Bajor doesn't step in, they might tear themselves apart. And there's almost that question of like, do we have a responsibility to these people who showed up at our door? They're asking for help. We want to help them. And if we don't help them, something bad's going to happen to them. That would be something that could be an issue, but that's not an issue here. They didn't care about establishing who the Screen people are. They just said, oh, we're farmers, so we can farm this barren land. It's like, okay, first off, like, prove it. Like, well, you can't. Go, like, it literally could just be go farm this one planet for like a year, and if you could do it well, like maybe we'll believe you, right? Like, there's no willingness on either side to compromise, but I don't think there's an obligation for like either side to compromise, right? Bajor has all the cards here. We don't want to give you this continent of ours because we're afraid we're gonna have to take care of you if something goes wrong, and we don't want to do that. It's like, you know, here's the thing. I'm not like if you ask me, oh, Holix, do you think you could take care of a kid right now? I'd be like, probably not. A lot of things going on in my life that are just not like conducive to me taking care of a kid. So you know what I'm not going to do? I'm not going to go to an orphanage and ask to adopt a kid because I know I'm not going to be able to take care of him, right? Bajor's like, look, we don't want these people coming to our planet, living on our planet, because if they do, we're going to be responsible for them. And again, there's a million other issues we could talk about. This episode did not give the topic they wanted to talk about the time of day. They wasted time on the translation issue. They wasted time on the weird sexism subplot. They wasted time on the stupid dress thing to have Kira and Hanik bond. Like, it's just not necessary. This is a forgettable episode. It's not just a forgettable episode. It's not a forgettable episode. It has nothing to do with the rest of the plot, but it is memorable solely because of how terrible it is. This was garbage. Like, this is not just here's the thing. You and I probably unfairly harp on TNG in part because like we think DS9 is so much better than TNG, and that's usually the controversial opinion, right? But TNG, this episode would be an insult to TNG. This episode would be an insult to the worst. Like, this gives like, I'd expect this in maybe like a modern Marvel movie.
Yeah.
This is garbage. Like,
yeah.
There's not much more to say. The morals are depraved. I'm willing to say that. Like, I'm not gonna like look up who said it. I'm not gonna like look up who wrote the episode. I'm not gonna like call them out. I'm gonna just chalk this up as a failure. But like, if they stand by the morals that are presented in this episode, it's actually like a little disgusting. A people who are suffering their own struggles are criticized for not taking on the responsibility of taking care of someone else. That's just wrong. Like,
this is ignoring all the
ignoring the fact that the same people who apparently need help were also just given a planet. Like,
I was also gonna be like ignoring how this has gone wrong in the past, and like I just this
I mean,
is
look,
so.
I don't even want to bring in real life elements to it, even though we could and talk about that for like hours on end. The episode doesn't stand on its own legs. The episode doesn't stand on its own merits. It doesn't matter that real life proves it wrong. It doesn't matter that common sense proves it wrong. It doesn't even try and justify itself enough. It's so bad.
Yeah.
I got nothing else to say. You and I have had different levels of anger and like discussion talking about this. It's a bad episode. It's garbage. It's easily F rank, 1 out of 10. 1 out of 5, whatever we fucking rate it, it's bad.
Yep.
There is almost nothing of merit in this episode. It doesn't have like any
Well,
glaring
let's see.
plot holes and contrivances, but it has characters acting illogically. It has characters acting out of character. It's just not
Yeah.
good.
The the only uh moments that are good are Nog and Odo in
Yeah, and
in the
that's
Spirit
barely
Saga.
anything. Yeah,
Yeah. A little bit of the Odo. No, actually, because I feel like Odo would have big problems with the because now he has to manage all these fucking more
yeah,
people. Like,
yeah.
and they're just so
Yeah.
uh
It's. I don't. I mean, there's nothing else to say. I think I think we're just done. Like, this was a failure of writing. This is a failure of television. Yeah, it's
when we
bad.
went
It's
rank the
it.
episodes at the end of the season, this is going into fucking like there's some. Did we have anything below F tier last time? We
Uh,
ranked episode like for season one.
I have to double check the video. I mean, we didn't have anything below F tier. Here's the thing. I don't know if I would say this is below F tier. This is, I mean, it's bad in a way that's a little bit meta too. That's kind of the other issue.
Yeah.
But like, this is definitely on par with Move Along Home and Dex. It's worse than both of those. But
Oh yeah.
it would be in the same category as those two. Those episodes maybe had one or two things that were fine. This is like it has maybe a scene or a line that's interesting, and that's it. But
Hmm.
yeah, like there's this episode. Like I said, it took 34 minutes to get to the point, so it has nothing to say itself. At the same time, it doesn't know how to shut up.
Yeah.
And let's just end it on that. Thank you everybody for taking time to listen. This is a long one. We got angry at this one. We're ideally, I don't think we have another episode that's this bad again in DS9. But we'll see. We'll see.
We'll see. Man, if we get it, it's like, you ate your words. That's gonna be funny.
I mean,
I'm
yeah,
kidding. But
I've admitted to being wrong before. I think there's a few times we criticized something about like Star Trek, and then they kind of correct it in a later episode, or they give a justification for it in a later episode that we didn't consider, and it's like, oh, okay, I guess that's fair. Like, I would retract my statement. Then I'm okay being wrong. I just there's nothing
mhm.
I think that could be said to justify this episode. So, thank you everybody for joining us. I'm Hollowix, and my friend over there with the tiny Ronnie PFP is Pike.
Who
Uh,
hang on, let me be very clear. That is not just Ronnie, that is the strongest waifu in all of Elden Ring history, flipping off her half brother Mikla, the strongest waifu in Elden Ring today. Ready to throw down. Like
all right. Well, thank you everybody, and we'll see you next time.